Of course. Yeah. Okay. We really have a sure.
Believe me, I am not distracted.
I didn't recognize you from
It is. It is me. It is. I am. I try to always be with the mask and the good to see you too.
So we used to have a space
We're gonna get going. We have a microphone just in case it's needed, but we're gonna try and since this is nice and cozy, I'm gonna just try and yell.
I will tell you already.
My voice can so my voice can project, but you want to know there? Maybe. All right. We'll try.
DJ the custodians of the
Yeah.
You did ask for that? We should be able to turn it off.
I'll try to listen to it. This is Jerry. Right. Okay. 6:09. Welcome everyone. Welcome to today's LSC meeting. Before we go into the roll call, like welcome everyone. I'm excited about this. Thanks all for showing up. So again, before the roll call, just going to go through our earnings. Today we begin our regular meeting for the school council, and from the norms there, you can see we strive to be active in meetings with community participants by sharing our practice and actively listening to others. Be flexible and respectful of others' time and decisions. Open to other people's views and perspectives, and reminded of differences in cultural and social backgrounds. Be transparent about concern, challenges and misunderstanding. Be reflective, collaborative, and supportive. We always take the work back to students. We do to make things better for our students, both academically and we always respect student staff and LSC member for that. With that, I'd like to do a roll call. Sir, Matthew Plumbing,
Lori Zamy, principal.
Ivan Schwab, teacher rep.
Jerry Baumgarten, teacher rep.
Stop the golden Ramirez.
Parent rep. Hayes, parent rep.
set out different formulation on that way. I have not heard from each other. The first item then that is the approval of the order of the agenda. And before we go into that, well, actually, I'll get back to that. So first approval of the order of the agenda. I can get a.
I'll make a motion to approve the order of the agenda. Second.
Favor? Opposed? Any discussion? The next item here is items meeting council approval. As I mentioned earlier, this is per the policy of the rules. What I need to do is post it for about 48 hours prior to the meeting. Unfortunately, I was not able to do that. And so what that means is that we are not going to be able to vote on items on this meeting, so that might pose a couple of challenges. Before we talk about that, we may need an additional meeting, probably remote, to vote on some of these items, where there are some indications about some of the programs that we're being asked to vote on. So that we can get that sense. So the first two items, minutes from the January 26th regular meeting, and then the February 23rd regular meeting. So I don't know if there are any questions about the minutes that I can share. There are quite a few points that you made that were get back to me. So again, we can't really vote to approve them. So I apologize. So again, we can't really vote to approve them. All right. Item C is FOP fundraising events. So our very own Chad sent out an email with items, the documentation that we need for the approval. Like I said, we can't vote on it, but Jack, I mean, just kind of like preemptive or just kind of putting the work ahead. If you want to just kind of briefly talk about it real quick, and then we can.
Oh, yeah, sure. We submitted, hello, everybody, Chad Curry, President Friends of Peirce. We have two events that we'll be having on school grounds. One is babysitting night. We had one recently that went really well on March 10th. We want to have another one April 28th. It's a Friday as well. So we submitted for approval for April 28th for a babysitting night. The other submission was around the move-a-thon. Now, during the move-a-thon, we're not doing any fundraising when that's happening on school grounds. However, as part of our fundraising, we offer digital ways to submit funds. We also take cash. And in order to pick up that cash on school grounds, we have to set drop days. So we've designated 6 days where students can bring cash to be picked up. Because it's being picked up on school grounds, we need approval to have that happen. We expect each one of those days to be around maybe $100. So a total of $600 to be picked up on school grounds. So those are the two proposals that we've submitted. I'm happy to take any questions you might have about either one.
Are they all collected at the same time? So it'll be a total of $600 when it's picked up?
Yeah, it's we're estimating because we don't know who's bringing cash in for that. Because typically what we try to do is do it digitally to make it easier for people. We also know it doesn't work for everybody. So we're thinking each pickup may be around $100. I mean, each day would be $100. So we have 20 minutes in the morning when school drop off for school, and 20 minutes during pickup. So $100 a day and age. Sorry. That's it.
Thanks.
Oh, and no, that's what? No, never mind. I'll say that later. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dad. Yeah, so Lori reminded me that the other item on the agenda that we thought we needed to vote on was the second book fair that was going to happen, and we already voted on that last time. So it looks like we don't need a special meeting. So I just saved you a few hours of your time. You're welcome. But again, my apologies for not, we would have been able to vote on these, so my apologies for that. The next item on the agenda is LSC student representative report. So Ella, how you feeling?
Good.
Yeah?
So all of the student voice representatives have been picked, and I think there were all the meetings this week. They all have 2 teachers, or student teachers or staff for to run their student council. It's 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th and 8th. They're all like split up into 3 different ones. That's student voice. And then Ms. Lynn sent out an email to have teachers share lunch codes to students, because lots of the students that know their lunch codes or haven't heard them in a while. I'm not sure if she sent it out, but those have been missing for review. And then for field trip, on the January meeting, some students had asked if there was any money being put into for field trips, and so the LSC gets $10,000 to cover costs for field trips for the students that can't pay for them. And then also for the DC trip, FOP gave $15,000 to have that for DC scholarship. And then student voice, there was complaints from me and other students that people were using inappropriate language all the time, and so student voice wants to work on peer-to-peer interaction to make sure that it's safe and appropriate for the school environment. And students, Ms. Amy said that students haven't been using the reporting form, which students can report things to the school to notify Ms. Amy. So she's going to send those out to students. And then no kid has applied to run for LSC. And I've been talking with some people, and they say that they don't want to apply because the meetings are too long. So as a runner,
So we want student voice. You gotta decrease the reading time.
I think there's a 2 here for all of us somewhere.
That's everything.
Thank you so much. Any questions for Ella? Yeah.
Regarding field trips, I think you probably know how strongly I feel about those being better funded too, from other meetings. Is there any discussion among you and your peers in 7th grade, looking ahead to 8th grade and knowing if there's an 8th grade trip? Has there been any discussion about, what you can do to maybe collectively try to raise some money? Because I know that that's commonly done at other schools.
There was a couple students that I think I showed this in the January meeting that to raise more money and stuff for it, but I don't think they've done that or anything, so I'm not sure. But there has been discussion.
I have some ideas from a friend, introduced son who's in 8th grade at National Teachers Academy, and they did concession stands every 2 weeks, a couple different ones stationed outside the school, and they already made $5,000.
Wow.
So I can get deep. Share them with you. I'm happy to collaborate on ideas. Was the babysitting night, was that in collaboration with the fundraising for the field trip, or is that separate?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if I could talk.
I guess that is a question. for you.
So it has been in the past, the way that we've raised those funds previously were through things like concessions. Where kids actually who were going on the trip were coming and helping raise the funds.
Uh-huh.
So the money for this year's was actually for last year's, right, Lori?
Pre-pandemic.
Pre-pandemic years. So that's actually where the money was 15,000 that she mentioned was from previous years. Yes, we did babysitting night, we fund that previously.
Yeah.
And then concessions at things like dance or other events. Tanya Larson, who used to be on the board, was the one that initially organized it. And that's how she was running. It was similar to what you're talking about with concessions.
So would it make sense to talk to you or someone else on FOP about like how we might coordinate some efforts?
I mean, yeah, that's something we've done in the past is raised exactly what she's talking about. So I think that's something we could definitely talk about.
I'm wondering if these student voice committees are a good platform to talk about this kind of an idea, because it strikes me as very different that the FOP is raising money versus the students themselves collectively raising money, right? Like the ownership of that instead of like the collective. Yeah, sort of spirit of it. Yeah.
But by coordinate, I meant, if FOP has a goal of covering, X percentage of all field trips, or a percentage of, I'm making this up hypothetically, a DC trip, then coordinating communication so that the students know well ahead of time, like X percent or X dollars are covered. If you want to collectively try to make that up or make a portion of that up.
I understand, yeah. I get it.
Just like.
If they had to pay $30,000 and we provided 15, this is the gap that you understand.
Very good. Thanks again. So the next item on the agenda is principal's report. Sit right back.
Hey, Katie. How are you? So first, thank you all for, sort of like being patient with me over the last couple of months. Since my return from my leave of absence, I've had quite a few personal challenges that I have encountered. I have a medical procedure tomorrow morning that I should be back Monday, but just there's been a lot that's been discovered. And my parents have both been in the hospital over the last month, so it's just been a lot. But I'm here, actually was meeting with Nate, I think around the time that my dad had gone to the hospital. So, last month I wasn't here unexpected. I really thought I was gonna be able to make the meeting. So that was not me trying to be irresponsible in my duties to the school, but just families, situations happen. A couple of highlights from the principal's report. I can't remember honestly if I had shared with you the updates to the CIWP, but the district is currently in the process of giving principals information in the planning for the next CIWP. We will have until the end of September to complete it. And we do want to make sure that we've got a full process for student, family, and staff engagement in the process. So more information will come about opportunities for all stakeholders to be involved in that, along with how the CIWP team is selected. And so like we could get finished with it before the end of the school year, but it might be like an ebb and flow, and we may work until the end of September to have that completed. But we're just at the beginning stages from the district in giving us guidance.
Sorry, how long is the process usually?
And in years, it really is dependent on the year. So there have been some years where we've received guidance in January and it was due by April. This year, they're giving it to us after budget. Budget should actually come out in April. So depending on when it's due and when it's received, we may or may not need a special LSC meeting, but I will keep the council posted. I'm hearing that the budget turnaround time will actually be shorter, but the CIWP time is longer. So in the past, it's like January till April, some years shorter, some years longer. But this is a completely shifted process.
So would it start this school year?
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah.
I was just trying to kind of backward math on the rule of September.
Yeah, no, we would want to definitely start this year. IR testing began for students with IEPs this past week. Because of the different modifications that students have. Some students require one-to-one testing, some require small group testing. Students who do not require accommodations will begin next Tuesday, March 21st. And then this is only for 3rd through 8th grade students, and then 5th and 8th grade students will take the Illinois Science Assessment, April 19th to the 21st. Through budgeting, we will also we'll receive funding allocations to potentially run summer programs. I had requested that we received funds to run a summer camp like we did last year, and I've requested that we receive the preview to pre-K, kickoff to kindergarten, and the English language learner program. So we'll find out during budgeting whether or not those are received. So the district is streamlining that process in a way that will give us more time to plan and have all of our funding allocations given to us at once versus getting it in bits and pieces. So that should be very helpful in planning for the different needs that we have for next school year. I did receive 2 special ed classroom assistant positions and have been able to staff both of those positions. And then I had requested 3 initially. The 3rd one was not allocated, but I will be appealing that allocation. And then we continue to receive 1 sub-SECA position to support a new pre-K student until their IEP has been revised. The office of,
Tell me what that is. What is subsequent?
it's a special ed classroom assistant, so that means that they haven't, until the student has an IEP that indicates that they require an aid in their IEP. They are giving us what's called a substitute position because the student is demonstrating a great deal of need. And we want to make sure that we've got appropriate staff to support the student. And so they do like an emergency allocation until the revisions can be made. And then as long as the revisions are made, or unless the student makes progress to where that is no longer needed, we would either request another full-time position or say we no longer need the sub-SECA because the student is doing just fine. And then we've also been able to get 2 of our part-time staff members to support newcomers to the United States through either English as a second language instruction or through small group instruction in the native language to support the different needs that we have. As I shared before, we've had an influx, an increase in the number of students entering Peirce School who are whose dominant language is Spanish and who are newcomers to the United States. And so we just, this has been new for us with having close to 30 students enter, and we just want to make sure that all of our students are being supported. This is a citywide trend. The district is aware that they're trying to create a stronger strategic plan as we enter into next school year to make sure that citywide there's stronger supports in place. 15. We have got 77% of our REACH teacher observations completed, which is actually pretty strong considering all the challenges that we've faced with different school leaders having to be out at different times. At the April meeting, Kim Leibovitz and Sam Lee would like to come in to give an update on the IB evaluation visit, which is a process that a lot of families and students and staff members were a part of. Preliminary or final results were given to us. We have not yet been able to meet with Sun High School so that we can develop a cohesive plan together. But that will hopefully happen within the next month. But regardless, Kim and Sam will come to the April meeting in order to share that. I had linked in, I know there were questions around the district and the school's bullying investigation policy, and so I had emailed to council members, also available in the LSC folder, the district's bullying investigation protocol, along with the school's family handbook and the process that we use when investigating student incidences. Mr. Jackson is taking a short leave of absence. His child is actually having a medical procedure next Tuesday. And I was able to finalize plans today. Liv Fonte, who's been part of our recess team, she's also a Peirce parent and a Peirce graduate. She's going to be stepping in to be able to support some of the student behavior. My teachers don't even know this yet because I'm going to be putting it in the bulletin, but wanted to make sure I had all my ducks in the row before formally communicating, and this will be shared with the community via SMORE, but she'll be stepping in short term to be able to support the different things that Mr. Jackson has been able to do. This is very new to her, and so her and I will be working very closely in collaboration, just as I had done with Mr. Jackson when he had come in. And so the school leadership team will need to take a more active role in supporting culture and climate, and we are willing to do that. We know that different things happen to different people at different times, and we are so thankful to have a large team that's always willing to step in and support. And then Nana Adu and Kayla Parks have been leading a group for 5th grade students called CSBY, Celebrating Strengths of Black Youth, and it's going really well. This is sort of in alignment with some of the work we've been talking about in creating affinity spaces for students. And we're trying to like experiment, and not so much experiment, but sort of try out different ideas and ways that we can continue to explore affinity spaces. And the 5th graders have absolutely loved being in that space with them. And Josiah from Northwestern will be partnering with some of our 7th grade teachers to also create an affinity space for students who identify as Black. And that should be starting hopefully within the next month. And we're looking at expanding that over time to other grade levels, but then to also other racial identities. So more will come, but we are making progress towards some of the goals that we've established as a school. And then last night was STEAM night. Thank you to everyone who came out, and thank you to Ms. Kiner and all the teachers who led activities. It was a lot of fun. The marshmallow building, the Vex robotics were really cool. Spring sports begin next week. We have track, flag football, girls soccer. I had included the student code of conduct data disaggregated by gender, race, EL, and IEP status. We still don't have an easy way of creating that report internally. And so I have somebody at central office who was able to pull this data for us. And I've requested that they have that as a report easily accessible for school leaders. So hopefully over time that is able to be resolved. Ms. Munoz sent an email to branch families yesterday, inviting them to a meeting to discuss student safety and potential next steps for Tuesday, March 28th, as a result of the incident that happened last week at the branch, where there was a shooting outside of the branch prior to the start of school. I know that there was questions about screen time in the early childhood classrooms during lunch. I had shared with the local school council the way that Mr. Jackson had broken out that time to show that there's actually a very limited amount of time where some screen time may be in place, but not for all students. So it's not like students are sitting down and asked to watch TV for the entire duration of the period. And so if there's like questions from the LSC after that, we can definitely discuss. And I'll just stop there. The rest of this, I think, unless there's other questions I can answer, but I don't like to read everything. Highlight a couple things.
I have a couple of questions. I have more than a couple, but I'll just start with one and then take turn. So my first question is about the bullying, I guess, is the umbrella topic. I know that the last equity committee meeting, there were parents who raised concerns about, it sounded like student bullying and.
Can you speak up, please?
Yes, at the last equity committee meeting, there were some parents who raised concerns either about student to student bullying or allegations of teacher to student bullying or or physical, like grabbing arms, that sort of thing. So I wondered, in addition to the district's protocol, what's happening, like what are next steps for the school to respond to those specific parent concerns, maintaining confidentiality, of course, about names and students, but just like an overview of what next steps are from the school.
Maybe I'm not following.
So what's the school's response to the parents who were at the equity committee meeting? Have they received a response? Will they receive a
That
response
information has not been brought to me.
from the equity committee?
No.
We'll get to that in a minute. So the equity committee is actually preparing a letter to send to Lori, and we're putting that together, and I'll talk to that on our slot there to talk
Okay.
about what's been done.
I'll table that question.
On the screen time question, can you outline like, I don't know if I understand what how was the objection raised, where did it come from, and then I guess what was the response? Is it that, it sounds like you're saying there's a minimal amount of screen time, but can you get more into like, how is that determined? How are you determining how much time?
The recess team had decided it. And so I think Rocky had sent an email to the LSC, right?
I'm sorry.
We could wait till it, is it on the agenda? We can wait. Let's just wait till we get to that on the agenda.
I have a question. I remember that you were in the meeting with Mr. Jackson for getting to be able to get all the information about how we get the racial discrimination, and you were gonna have a meeting, or did you have a meeting?
Yeah, that's where the data from in the
Oh,
report,
that's what.
that's where this came from, is we've had two meetings with the districts. One that said we can't pull this for you, and then the other was able to pull it for us.
So it's not available through Aspen? Yeah.
No.
Okay, that's it.
I have a follow-up question about that. So, because I talked to Mr. Jackson when I was here for the African American Showcase Day, I just happened to see him, and it was right after the LSC meeting, so I wasn't able to ask you this question. And he explained a little bit about how somebody was dedicated to pulling that information last year for us, and then that person left. And so I'm wondering, are they going to be able to continue providing, on some regular cadence, quarterly or whatever, that data? That's my first question.
Yeah, that's the goal, is that each month I'm able to just request this person to pull this for us.
Okay. My second question is going to be, in the absence of that, what might we be able to?
So then the other option is to just not look at classroom referral data and just look at the outcome data that actually results in an SCC violation. But what we were hoping for is like anything that's escalated from the classroom to really look at that data.
Right.
Because we have data, which I had shared in the February, I sent an email afterwards, like we have that data, it's just not the classroom escalation.
Can you kind of just go over this information on that they pulled from the central office?
Yeah,
Because I don't necessarily know what it's stated.
sure. So at the bottom of this page, I created a couple of bullets, or like sort of points of reference. One is that in talking to the person that pulled the data, we actually have some of the fewest classroom referrals in the ISP network. And they had said that most schools are seeing a significant increase in the number of referrals, and our data actually is like quite low comparatively speaking.
Is referral like detention?
No, it just means that a teacher has experienced something in the classroom and they are escalating that issue for school-wide assistance. And so since August 1st to March 10th, there were 62 logged classroom incidences. So Like, that's like approximately 2 per week over the course of the school year. Of those 62 student entries, 38 of them are unique students. And so that means that there are a total of 38 students out of a school of 1,074 who have a classroom escalated behavior, which is a very low percentage of students. Of those 38 individual students, 12 of them have more than 1 entry, and 3 students have 5 to 6 entries. And so we're looking at 3 students who have significant numbers of classroom referrals. And in each one of those cases, we have significant plans in place where we see success, then things fall back, we have to revisit the plan. And it's been hard, for staff, for students, for school leaders to continue to strategize and problem solve on ways that we can support students. And I think that speaks to the use of restorative practices school-wide and our investment in really trying to create wraparound supports and attend to the individual needs of students. I mean, there's in any school, especially post-pandemic, people are facing pretty severe and significant things that have been very trying for students and staff and families. So while we have 62 logs, ideally we get to 0, right? Ultimately that's the goal, that we have nothing. The reality is that there is something. The part that we've been wondering is, why do we see an over referral of Black students in our data? And that continues to be true. So if we look at the back of this page, we have the data, and we can look at race and gender, and we see 26 of the entries are for Black male students, which is a high number of entries. So of the total 62, 1/3, higher than 1/3 are for Black males.
One quick question. So the red 4 through 6 is number of incidences, or
Exactly.
it's great. Okay, so we're not doing 7th and further, just aren't.
No. This is, no, 1 through 3 is the SEC code of 1-3. And then 4-6 is the, either group 4, 5, and 6 are grouped together in red. Those are the more severe
Okay, yeah.
escalations. Groups 1, 2, and 3 are lower. And so there's an initial code in Aspen, which shows what those codes are.
What does it look like if you break it down by grade? If they're concentrated to older students, where?
So what we're seeing is that the grade levels of where those 3 students are at is where we're seeing the higher number of referrals. These are, I believe, 3 students in 3 different grades.
Other, okay. It's spread out.
Correct.
So, Lori, I'm sorry, just what you just said, I'm trying to process it. So the grades that those 3 students are in are where you're seeing the highest number of referrals, broadly speaking?
Because those numbers are also skewing the data. Because there's so few referrals.
Yeah.
The data looks very skewed when you look at it by grade level or by homeroom.
Yeah.
Because of the 3 students.
Gotcha.
Thank you. And then the other ways that this is broken down.
Yes.
So,
So top left shows students who have an IEP, yes. On the right column, students who do not have an IEP would be no on the left column.
so this is purely reporting the number of, sorry, is this, oh, this is referrals for those with that.
Yeah,
And then EL is what?
and then the EL is, are they considered an English language learner for CPS codes? No or yes. Are they a student who is an English language learner along with a diverse learner? And then gender that students are identified by female, male, and non-binary.
So when we look at those graphs, whether it's IEP, IL, EL, the sum of it is, it ends up being 59. Most, so if I take the 32 and the 1, that have no IEP, and I add the 21 and the 5 that have an IEP, I get to 59. So I do the same thing for the other graphs. And for the most part, I get 59. So the gender one is missing a value. How does that, I mean, it looks like
It could
it's
be
not a big
that
deal. It's
three
left.
did not result in an SCC violation. I would need to go back to look at why those 3 are missing.
So your takeaway from this is you're focusing. Like, it sounds like you're concerned about the racial disparity in this data. What else are you worried about? Like, when you look at this, what other things?
Diverse learner data as well. So
Is there a
it's not like coming out here as much. Last year it was, but that's something that like we are very much like conscious of because of previous data, is when we're seeing students with IEPs being referred, needing to like really dig into why that is happening.
Okay.
And so I think we're seeing to that point, like some success. And that the number of students with IEPs. No, I'm sorry, I was looking at English language learner. The number of students with IEPs, we're still seeing an over referral of students with IEPs in this data.
So when it comes to action, what you can do, what can you do? Like, what are the things that you're considering to address it?
So this goes to like some of the like, there's multiple. One is what's happening at the classroom level and the interactions with the students or the teacher. Is the teacher making like the best possible moves all the time? And then if not, then needing to coach and support that teacher. Is it a function of the IEP needing to be revised and needing to really problem solve around what's written in the student's IEP? And then making those revisions? Is a child needing social work or not? And then do we need to like add in social work to the IEP? It's once we start to see this and we start to see like some students being over referred who have like other categories, trying to like problem solve and dig into the system of support for that student. And there's not always the same answer for all students. The other thing is our constant work at creating awareness with our staff and who are the students that they're having interactions with. And so like our work with racial equity and the trainings that we've engaged with Dr. Fisher, continuing to like keep our learning front and center, recognizing our own bias, recognizing ways that we may need to strengthen relationships with students. So there's not always like a one size fits all answer. It's trying to really understand what's going on with individual students and teachers and then create that next step of support.
And it's elevating awareness.
Yes.
Is there a way for us to be able to see the number of incidences per student? So from the racial demographic, so that brings even more clarity.
Yeah, so that's why I wanted to like bullet out that you figure if there are 3 students who have up to 6 entries, most of them were either 5 or 6, like that's 18,
Right.
18 logs,
Right.
so to speak,
three,
for
yeah.
those 3. And then we have 38, so it's 56.
Mhm.
So then we have 16 other logs that are among 16 logs among. Can't do math right now, but like, yeah,
But yeah, because I think that would also impact how we are looking at it, just from a standpoint, like if we're looking at, okay, so say in any of these higher categories with 24 with Black males, 9 Latino males, and 10 white males, how many of those have multiple incidences?
Yeah.
So that It might make even more sense to us.
Yeah, that, I mean, that would require them to like another report.
Right.
But like qualitatively, or anecdotally, do you have a sense of that? Just like,
Not off the top of my head, no. I would rather go and like look at it to see who are the students.
Oh, okay, so there's another, in conjunction to what everybody else is talking about, there's another document under the middle of the year behavior. Team data, I don't know if anybody else was able to open it, but I did just get access to it, and it, kind of breaks down, and I'll be sure to share it with everybody. It kind of breaks down, so, yeah, what's the difference between the middle of the year behavior health team data review, because it talks about all these different tiers of intervention. Yeah, how do these two, how are they related?
They may or may not be related. So not all students that are receiving behavioral health services are represented here and vice versa. But what I will say is that where we see an over referral of students, one of the considerations is, should we make a referral to the behavioral health team?
Okay.
And is there additional layer of support that needs to be put in? And so in some cases, there may be that overlap for a variety of reasons.
Can you give us, the council, just a little brief overview of what is tier 1 intervention, tier 2, and tier 3? So maybe even Jerry, and then we speak to tier 1.
I want to look at like how you're reading it, because it can mean something different depending on how it's being reported.
Because going back to Byron's question about like, what are action steps? I think this is a big piece of it, is what are the interventions that occur before a student has a full on.
What was the date on there?
It's the middle of the year behavior health team data review. The link was under, in the principal report, it's under behavior health team. So you may have missed it or tried to click on it and access was denied. So I just got access to it and I'm gonna email it. How about I email this second page?
But does it have a date when it was posted in there?
Doesn't matter what's in there.
I see.
So are you looking in the second box where it says how many of the BHT students are receiving the following?
Yeah.
Tier 1 practice
Yeah.
recommendations, consult with the behavioral health team. So that might be that the teacher is consulted with the BHT is saying to that teacher, we want you to do like a check in, check out plan with the student. Or these are like some teaching considerations. You want to use proximity during this time of day, or you want to make sure that you're like heavy on positive reinforcement. It would really depend on, these would be like classroom level interventions for students. And then it might be that a member of the BHT may consult or check in with the teacher to see how things are going. And these also could be students who are close to exiting, receiving support and wanting to see how are they doing without, like, while that support is removed, how are they doing with their teacher.
I have another question. I feel like it's in the same vein of what Rocky's saying and Byron is saying. So I guess how does like the restorative practices integrate into the classroom in a way that I know I totally get the case by case basis of strategizing. But say, so with these referrals and the disproportionately high Black male ones, is there, other than just the general like training, is there something built into the restorative practices That's sort of like, I don't know, allows like Mr. Jackson to address things head on with teachers if it's like, I know this, it just gets more and more specific, but just if something is specifically happening or one teacher is over referring Black male students or something, is there ways within the restorative practices that Mr. Jackson can then like have a conversation with that teacher to be able to be like, you know, just, this is where it's like, no longer just like generally talking about when these things happen in a training, but then when it's actually happening, how is that addressed?
Yeah, so I wouldn't necessarily like place that under restorative practices, because our work with restorative practices is like, it's a whole school effort as it relates to restorative mindset, restorative language, the use of restorative conversations, talking circles, peace circles. Like, there's a lot to restorative practices. But what does happen when we start to see trends or like certain things that we notice with like particular staff or students, like Mr. Jackson and myself, Ms. Munoz, Mr. Lee, like a member of the school leadership team would engage with teachers in those conversations to say, like, this is what we're seeing and we're noticing. We want you to really think about this, or this as we move forward. So I wouldn't like put them directly with restorative conversation. It would be more like raising awareness and consciousness for a staff member. And sometimes it may result in even like disciplinary action depending on the situation.
One of the things that's come up a couple of times this year, and this is for maybe speaks to the IWP revisions, is as a community, as a Peirce community, there's a lot of misunderstanding about the difference between restorative practice. And when I say community, I mean teachers and parents and students. Restorative practice, SCC violations, tier interventions, like, I think we're just sort of not clear about the process of the procedure, coming up with a bullying conversation. So I think it's for future discussion or engagement with the community.
The other thing I'm thinking about, and I know we talked about this, the next steps cohort talked to you about this over the summer. And we haven't met in a while, either as a group or with you, but I'm thinking about student voice in all of this, and you had shared, I think it was a 2019 student survey that was student developed that focused on what I would call like feelings of psychological safety and belonging and, connections with adults in the school. And I wonder if, I'm completely riffing here, but equity committee, if we could think about something like that, if not for this year, for next year, just to elevate, the student voice in these referrals and in how students are experiencing these things, particularly those who are experiencing over referrals.
And I don't know if that's maybe something that the Northwestern community spaces or whatever they're called. Yeah, that maybe that would help. It seems like that would be in that wheelhouse. But if there's another way that is sort of like within the equity community or something.
I was wondering, principals, Amy, about the affinity space pilot for Black students. Like, what does that look like? I guess is that like an after-school program or club or?
It would be during the day. I think they're looking at 4 to 6 sessions this year.
Right.
And it would be during the SEL block, 1 day a week.
Okay.
So all students have in middle school a 50-minute SEL block, 5 days a week. Well, 2 days for SEL, 3 days for learning communities, which are differentiated blocks. So one of those SEL blocks would go to the affinity space.
Okay. And then I was wondering, what is the it says like we hope to expand affinity spaces. Is there like is there a plan or a timeline for expanding affinity
Well,
spaces?
that's where we want, to see what happens with the pilot and then what are like the realistic next steps.
Okay, I know there's a lot of interest. It seems like we've been talking about it for a while, so people are excited about to see what's happening. I think it's great.
Any other questions? Comments?
Different topic, I was wondering about, the incident at the branch, and just like the communication around that and what I know that it sounds like there's gonna be a meeting, about it with the branch families. But I was just curious, like what we can expect, you know, in terms of communication when incidents like that occur. I was hearing that, you know, families heard about it for the first time showing up, right, to drop off their students and approach like what was like a crime scene or what was a crime scene. So I was wondering if what happened, I guess, in terms of communication last time is what we should expect moving forward, or if there is something else.
I think we should maybe have that discussion
Yeah.
next week.
Yeah, we have new business to, and that's one of the items. I think if it's okay, if we can move that or table that until then.
Okay.
Just to go through the reports and then get to that. We will get to it.
I have one more question about, it's not, I don't think it's in here, but it's kind of related to what we were just talking about. So the new CPS Cultivate survey, I know you mentioned it or we talked briefly about it, I think in January. What's the timeline? Have students taken that?
They took it, I got an email saying the data is available. We have not had a chance to even review the data yet.
Okay, gotcha. I was trying to ask my child if he remembers taking any kind of survey, like I forgot it. You said there was like a couple, okay. But might we get a sense of what that data shows before the year is out?
Potentially, once we like have a chance to look at it and like understand like how it's reported, that's possible.
And I know we have a few big topics that we're gonna be discussing that have been tabled. So I just wanted to remind everybody, I'm a timekeeper and I'm timing everything except principal's report. I'm just letting it go as long as it needs to, but everything else I was gonna give 10 minutes to and just at least say, okay, we're at the 10-minute mark. We can decide to go over if we want to, but just so everybody knows that they might hear that from me.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, we usually put that for the safety committee update. There's anything there? Nope.
Got it. Okay.
All right. Thank you. Budget.
We'll table we'll table all of that. I mean, I don't have any budget transfers. We'll table the approval of the internal accounts to the next meeting. There's no other budget updates.
I enjoyed the table that you have here, budget transfers from to amount. Great, thank you for that. All right, next item on the agenda, public participation. So I think we have a sign-up sheet up here. Folks were able to put their names on. I'm sorry, did you? I don't, okay, yeah, I can get there.
It's kind of nice to take an hour after start.
Yes.
I'll benefit from a break.
Yeah, I'm just gonna stretch it. Very good. We have quite a bit of people here, so let's get into it. Vic,
Oh,
you're
sure.
first.
I noticed you have another number 12, public participation. And
Yes, so we usually have two of them, so
I will wait.
You wanna wait?
It's better, I can. The topic is around 11, so do
Yeah.
you want to have your schedule first? Or?
it's really up to you. Like, we don't have a real.
It may be a while.
Be careful how long you want.
Okay, I'll take time. To 2 minutes. So good evening, everyone. I'm Big Christian Murdy. I'm a parent, father of my son who's in the room 101 at the branch pre-K. And I did come to talk about last week's incident on Tuesday, but really not so much with the incident, but like what it really brought me out to come and be engaged in this group. I have to thank Matthew and Recky and principal for engaging with me in some emails and encouraging me to come out. Just some little acknowledgements, I think for those who aren't engaged with the branch, because, we're 7% of that student body, right? It's a very small number of families and parents. The shooting that took place, it was, closer than those doors are to our playroom windows, right? And we don't, as a society, control what happens outside the school, but the branch is so unique because it's so close to the outside world in a different way. And when I walk up to this building, we were in 3-year-old pre-K last year. To me, safety isn't a thing. You don't have it or not have it. It's both a feeling and a process. And so when we were here last year at really the beginning of our Peirce journey, I have that like warm fuzzy feeling of drop off on Gregory's side with all the other kids in the field, and we had a fantastic experience, and teachers did such a good job with that. Was it COVID? Was it not COVID? But we made it, and those were the groups really in vaccines, and they did fantastic. But my initial reaction when we did the orientation with the branch was, first of all, Miss Singer, teacher, like, wow, she did so much with the space and made it welcoming. Welcomed me, son, grandparents came, we all showed up, and it was like, great. But the space, and I know a lot of work went into, I wasn't here for it, but people worked to find the space, build this space, create this program that I see the benefits in my son every day. He's like, ideas, like, this is great. But I always had this kind of gut feeling with the space. I'm like, oh, it's really close to the street, but it's okay, it's for a year. And those things that were in the back of my mind are kind of now in the front of them. So really what I want to do personally is, like, when you walk up to this building, you see what our like ancestors did with like creating an institution, right? And that is that feeling of safety. It's also the feeling of like legacy and the feeling of something permanent, right? You're part of this, I don't know, 100 years, right? But that's the same thing we're trying to build in our students, right? A legacy of learning, a legacy of like their involvement in Chicago. And with the Peirce branch maybe becoming a permanent fixture in the community, a good one, really the entry point to people's journey and experience in the Peirce community. Like, how do we keep building the branch too? Even though it's a 1-year kind of experience for families, we're gonna have a whole generation of 1-year families coming there and then coming here. So I just had some ideas. I don't know what the best mechanism is for, is it working with the LSC, or is it working with the ward office, or a combination of all levels of government, little things we can do to create that sense of permanence. Lantern boxes on Broadway that can add beauty, but also some shelter, beautiful flowers, the kids can do gardening. I don't want to make our world a prison where we have to hide everything and protect and cage everything, but really balance that sense of like, what do little people need in terms of some, safety, with still keeping that openness to the community. Because how great is it that they walk to the playground, get to like wave and smile and see the dogs in the other neighborhoods. So it's a careful balance. And, I walked up to the windows in Bryn Mawr, and I don't know, they're all kind of at this level and above, right? And so there's something there that in the architecture and the traditional design that just really works, but not making the building feel like, oh yeah, don't go to school because it's all down. So that's really it. I think also operating practices, maybe it's like a chance to revisit. I know the teachers have to juggle so much, but particularly pick up and drop off on the Broadway side. Just, you open the door to the Broadway side and it's only a 12-foot sidewalk, and I always worry, like, some kid's just gonna run out because they're just, 4-year-olds, right? They're in their own kind of place. So are there opportunities to like look at operations and think about, can kids, especially from 101, 102, maybe like wait in the corridor once they're dropped off? There's probably a million things, right? And how many teachers can they watch the kids and all that needs to go in? So is it a subcommittee? Is it maybe the meeting that this assistant principal is setting up? I think those could be good forums. I think I don't know how many other pre-K parents could come out, but we have a lot of energy. We want to kind of have this as the beginning of our onboard to maybe joining the LSC, and just channel this you know, unfortunate thing more in a productive way and contribute to the future of the bridge. So I'll leave my remarks at that for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm going just down the list there, Nate. Nate.
I prepared,
Yes,
kind of.
you're good.
My name is Nate. I have two fourth grade students here at Peirce. Sorry, feel muffled. It's Nate. There's an accent, a good, so to the right over the E. So I have two fourth grade students that attend Peirce. I had an eighth grader here last year. And my grandson is a student at the Peirce branch. I understand that everyone is concerned about the safety of their children, especially when they're not with us. My grandson was being dropped off by myself and my husband a few moments after the shooting, near the branch location. At no time did we feel like the students, the parents, or most important to us, our grandson was in danger or unsafe. I did, however, wonder about the condition of the people involved. I'm minimally active on the Parents of Peirce Facebook page and saw a post that day where there are many people who were outraged at the email sent out by Principal Zaney following the incident. I realize that the Facebook page does not represent all parents at Peirce, but quite frankly, I felt that the language being used by many of the participating parties was bashing Principal Zaney and was bordering on fear mongering. No one seemed to take into account that Principal Zaney was doing her job. She was following what I'm sure was a protocol required by CPS following this type of incident. Yet many people chose to focus on the fact that her response wasn't fast enough or did not provide enough detail. I have two children that attend SEN, and there was recently an incident there involving a lockdown. Principal Zaney's response was in line with the response at SEN for a similar situation, which potentially involved a weapon. Her response was completely appropriate. I'd like to remind everyone that what really needs to be centered here is the fact that there was a 15-year-old child that was shot, not whether Principal Zaney was doing enough hand-holding. Let's discuss what needs to be addressed with our aldermen and police to make drop-off and pick up safer for our children, if you feel that safety is the issue. Let's use the same energy I saw in the Facebook group to make changes that impact not only our children, but the community we live in. Our family came to Peirce last year from the suburbs where my children previously attended both public and private schools in Elmhurst and Lombard. When we moved here, we were not quite sure what to expect from Chicago public schools. To be honest, we were expecting the worst. Instead, what we found was a school where our children are thriving in a welcoming and supportive environment. One of my children recently had an experience which required Principal Zaney's involvement. She showed herself to be compassionate and devoted to the safety and well-being not only of my children, but all students at Peirce. I'm grateful to Principal Zaney. My children are, and the students at Peirce are privileged to have Principal Zaney and the teachers and staff as their advocates and protectors while they are not in our arms.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, Ms. Gableman. All right.
I'll use my teacher voice. So everyone, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Katie Gableman. I've been a teacher here for 18 years. This school means the world to me, which is why I'm here tonight. I've put my heart and soul into this building, into this community for the last 18 years. But I want to speak to you tonight about something I cannot sit back and be quiet about. It's been brought to our staff's attention that a few parents from the high school community named and labeled teachers and staff in the public forum. Due to this public meeting, their names were written and posted online for anyone to see. In one particular case, as an extension of this meeting, a great educator, colleague, and friend was made in a text thread in a negative light for parents to email the Peirce Equity Committee on any information they could provide to this about this educator. I was shocked to find this out, and I'm sick to my stomach. This type of vile and inappropriate usages of names creates mistrust between teachers and parents. For almost 2 decades that I've been here, there has been, in my experience, this amazing, wonderful relationship with parents, teachers, as collaborators. We're all here for the same reason, for our children. And that's one of the reasons why I've chosen to stay in this school for so long. However, in the last couple of years, there's been just a small group of parents that have felt strongly about certain things, which we all should be passionate about things. But it has begun to create a toxic environment that is not conducive to creating equitable and restorative progress within our school community. This type of action and behavior has to stop. It cannot go any further than what it already has. The feeling of mistrust, not only by parents and community members, has led to other, by many of us, and myself included, sometimes. This, especially this school year, where teachers and staff in our school do not feel safe with work. We feel like we're being put under a microscope and judged by parents and community members who may not know us. They see short glimpses of our day when we're passing with students, drop off, pick up. There's a lot that goes on in our jobs and in our daily lives. And then there's, things might be picked out, rooms are spread, these things capture hearsay. And teachers don't feel comfortable sharing this with leadership, or you're not being fully supported or protected, or in fear of retaliation at some level. Good teachers with great potential have left the school for several years were not supported when support should have been appropriate, or parents are not supported, and we're better than this. We have to be better than this. This is our school, and we're all here for that same reason. All of us in this community want us to make this the best school for our kids. This staff has exceptional educators. Every time I go to another CPS school, I feel so grateful to be an educator at Peirce. And people know how great this school is. And with that, we have dove into this really important work in equity, anti-bias curriculum, and restorative practices. A lot of my colleagues in other CPS schools don't even talk about that. We talk about that here. And all this work has been centered around our children. However, we can't put these children first if we have staff that don't feel supported and protected by our community, by parents, by administration, and the local school council. So I ask that the LSC look into this matter further, and that the individuals who have caused harm and humiliation to those that were listed, that is prepared. So thank you. Thank you. And I want to do so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. All right.
We're at 14 minutes, but it's exciting to
Thanks,
have you
Gabby.
here.
Abby?
I'll try to keep it down to 2 minutes. So I'm going to step up and walk up to the front. That's who I am. So first of all, I wanted to thank Ella for being here, for bringing the issues that she brought to the LSC. I think that's really important, specifically around the fundraising around the student trips. I know that we heard from Chad and FOP. I want to also let the LSC know that the LSC is empowered to approve fundraising for a certain amount, and then the FOP can choose to fundraise for that or not, or any other group in anywhere can choose to fundraise for that. So the LSC decides that they want to approve $20,000 of fundraising. They don't need to wait for the FOP to concur. You can pass that, and then you can solicit somebody to do that fundraising. Parents can organize themselves, the FOP can do it. So I just want to let you guys know that you guys are empowered to do that. And then because it's data and it's racial data, I have to comment on what I just heard. I was a little bit disturbed by the attempt to parse out the data. So I think what this data reflects, which we all know that nobody's saying, is that we live in a racist society and there's racial bias. And so when you look at power and the way that it's used in the society, it's used differently depending on your color of skin. So there's an attempt to parse out and understand how the 3 students who are 5 or 6, whatever. So let's put it out there. Let's assume that they're all Black, and that's 17 incidents. So 26 minus 17 is still 8. 8 Black males compared to the 10 Latinos and 12 white males. If you just like give that the benefit of the doubt, that is still disproportional to the number of Black male students that we have in the school. So let's throw those 3 people out. Let's assume that they're all Black males. You're still looking at disparities here, right? And so I think we need to talk about, with all due respect to our teachers, we need to talk about racial bias and how that impacts teachers. And I think there needs to be more training for students and the community around the tools that we have, because I don't think that people use them correctly. My daughter noticed some racial bias with her teacher last year. She and her classmates got together and had a meeting with that teacher, and they had a discussion with that teacher. I don't know if that ever got into a forum so that it could be raised up to the administration or to the LSC. Like they didn't even tell their parents that they were doing it until after the fact. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. Marietta.
Thank you. This is my first time at LSC meeting. I'm happy to be here and happy to be this forum and everything. So my name is Marietta Bowman. I am also the parent of a pre-K student. Our students are actually, our sons are in the same class. So it's been an unusual opportunity for us to meet each other. Nice. And so I have I wrote my statement note. Just go from there. So the shooting that occurred outside the ranch last Tuesday was obviously a surprise to the school community, as these things are. We cannot control what happens in this external environment. And it was a surprise both, as Viv made the point, that it was so close in proximity to where we walk every day and drop our children off. And also that it was so near to the school where that sidewalk is usually full of students and families and staff, as well. So, it was just lucky that there were not more injuries other than the 15-year-old who was shot in that incident, and, which is a tragic situation in and of itself. That being said, I do consider that it was a serious potential threat to the school community and the safety. And while I believe that the school administration and the staff were focused on the safety of the students during that time, I did feel that the communication to families regarding the incident was not adequate, considering its seriousness. So the email that Principal Samey sent out about 4 hours after the incident to the entire school community, I did not think was appropriately responsive to addressing the immediate concerns about the safety of children, parents, and families whose children were at the branch at that time. And it was frustrating to me that even subsequent to that, other than the email we got from Ms. Munoz about the follow-up meeting, which is great, I'm thrilled that that's happening. I appreciate that as a step. That there was no direct communication to branch parents as sort of a unique community that was directly affected by this beyond, the email to the broader school community. And my main concern is about the communication to the branch families assuring us of the safety of the children, and that there's no additional threat in a situation like that. While I saw the police tape when I dropped my son off at 7:50, and there was some major incident, I encountered a neighbor who was walking back after having dropped her daughter off. I said, "What's going on?" She said, "I'll tell you in a minute." Not when I was talking from my 5-year-old who's going to, absorb all of this information. We dropped him off, and it was not until we were walking back that I found out that it was finished. And at that point, the only information that we were able to get by it, since we didn't see anyone other than the teachers who were preceding the students, was what my neighbor got from the police officer who was standing there. So as parents, that's a very panicky situation. There's a shooting that's occurred right outside the school. We have no information. We spent about 10 minutes standing on the sidewalk, a block away from the school, deciding, do we turn around and go back and get our child? We don't know anything about this circumstance. In the end, we both decided not to do that because my neighbor had spoken to the police officer who essentially said, this was an isolated incident. There are police on the scene now. We do not think there's any additional threat. And so we decided to go home. but I was awaiting information from the school. I called the main school office. I was told that Ms. Munoz, about 9:30, was on her way back to the main branch, there was gonna be an email for her. And it was not until 11:30 that we got. So I just want you to imagine for a minute as a parent, what that kind of feels like in that situation, especially when you're talking about 4 or 5 here. So while I understand that the communication protocol, and I've been in touch with Ms. Amy and Ms. Munoz as well, I've spoken with Alderman Osterman as well as he was at school drop off that day. While I understand that the communication protocol was in place and was followed that day, it does not seem to be a protocol that is appropriate for this circumstance, and that instead an approach that is more flexible and responsive is needed. What I would have appreciated that morning is receiving an email or a text that was directed at branch parents, guardians, families very shortly after school had started, saying something to the effect of, a police incident occurred in front of the school and is currently being investigated. There is no current threat to staff or students. We will provide more information as it's coming. That at least would have let us know that the children were safe, and then we could have awaited more. That was the piece that I found difficult. And again, I believe, and I've said this to Principals Amy and to Ms. Munoz as well, I believe that the staff were looking out for our children. That is why I didn't turn around and walk back and pick up. And I believe that you all followed the protocol that was in place. My comment is, and I realize this goes beyond the school to the district, is that I don't think that protocol is sufficient for incidences where there is a serious potential threat to school safety. In addition, I will say, and this follows up to Vip's comment about infrastructure, I will say this incident has highlighted some of the unique infrastructure vulnerabilities of the branch location. Being very on Broadway, 12 feet from that very busy street. For example, I never would have before last week thought to ask if the floor to ceiling windows are bulletproof. Or what happens if a car crashes through that window in that playroom where there are children. There is no barrier, it's completely exposed. And I hate that I have to, as someone living in our society, consider that for my child, but I consider that as a school community, this was a lucky miss, right? That there was not more injuries beyond the 15-year-old, which again is a tragic situation. And I want to take this as an opportunity to see how we can revisit how to shore up safety at this branch that is not on campus, that isn't off campus, that is a place where every day we drop our kids off, making sure that we're hopping out of the cars on Broadway, you know, before cars are there. And I appreciate the branch, I appreciate what it's there for, and I think that it should be a consideration of other ways to increase physical security around there as well. So my hope is that these conversations can lead to improvements in the protocols and communication protocols to allow for more rapid updates to families of affected students in circumstances where there's a safety threat. And I appreciate this forum, and I look forward to continuing the conversations with the school community to try to improve safety and related conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going to take this opportunity to ask if there were any emails that came through the Peirce inbox. That's something that we try to monitor also, like when we do public participation, to see if there are any comments that came through.
I did email Ryan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, thank you again, all. We will have a second public participation. I have the sign up sheet here if people are so inclined, so please don't hesitate. So with that, we're gonna go through the next section. Community group reports. What we've done is we've asked those groups to send reports in ahead of the meeting, so we try and shorten the time because of being here. But sometimes it doesn't always happen, and we just happen to have Chad here today.
I noticed you looked at me when you said that. Chad Curry, once again, president, Friends of Peirce. It's great to see new parents and teachers as well. Thank you for being here and voicing for the community, all of you. But I come to you tonight, came for the just to provide context around the 2 fundraising quests. But also I want to make clear that we've got a couple fundraisers coming up. One is Peirce Day at Hop Leaf. We're bringing it back. we're very excited about. Michael Roper and his wife Louise have been amazing partners to Peirce, raising a lot of money for this school and not having kids at the school. And on Sunday, April 16th, we'll be having a hop leaf day all day. All proceeds from that day come back to Friends of Peirce. So in the past, they've raised between $18,000 and $30,000. So it's a very significant fundraiser for us. They've also, in the past, have met with Principal Amy to talk about her fundraising needs and have requested specific things be supported with their funds, specifically the drinking fountains with the bottle filling stations have been passed. May 12th is our move-a-thon. We're working on securing sponsors for that. The request, as I said, was for 6 specific days to pick up money before the move-a-thon itself. So yeah, we're in the process of planning for the move-a-thon, and our next meeting is March 21st. So it'll be next Tuesday we meet. And that's it for our report. Any questions for me? You might have. Thank you very much for what you do.
Thanks, Chad.
Thank you, Chad. Chad mentioned something, and I'd be remiss if I don't say that. This is what our 8th meeting as a group. This is probably our largest attendance.
Yeah.
I know that sometimes issues or incidents cause these things to happen. We would like you to continue coming. I know we have other things going on, but we really appreciate people coming in to those meetings. And I'm not saying that in vain. It's really true. I don't mind hearing from these people, but they're, we're part of the same group, and hearing from people other than us. Again, this is great, but we really appreciate what's happening here.
I second that.
Throw some tomatoes
I
at
learned a lot about a school. When my son was in pre-K at Audubon, I went to probably every LSC meeting just because I'm a little bit of a school nerd. But you learn so much about the school and so much about the inner workings and CPS's relationship. So I encourage you all.
Thank you. The next item is PSO, Peer Service Organization. I think they shared their report with us. I don't know if anybody has any questions. They did, right? Right. Next one for racial equity parents group. I don't.
There was a report.
They're right. Any questions? Comments? Next one, committee reports, starting with the bilingual advisory committee. I think they just had their meeting, right?
Yeah, I didn't
Was
see the
yesterday, if I can remember.
No, it's last Thursday, but the report.
Wasn't there something yesterday?
Say that again?
Was there a meeting? Was there a meeting yesterday? Oh, was it-
Last Thursday.
oh, that's right. That was there. Okay.
You got it.
No, you're good.
We have a report.
Okay, very good. Next section is committee reports. We're already there. Second item there, PPLC, yes, sorry.
Just one thing about that meeting.
Yes.
By meeting, they're in the process of looking for volunteers for the El Niño. So if anybody's out there, please sign up, get involved.
Yes. PPLC?
Yeah, we met the other day, and we actually prepared a statement that we'd like to read instead of submitting a report. Can everyone hear me? I want to make sure that I'm loud enough. It has been brought to our attention as the teacher representatives that a subcommittee of the LSC violated the norms that we as a collective group set forth. A subcommittee of the LSC held a meeting where teacher and staff names were shared and recorded in public minutes after we agreed that teacher and staff names would not be shared when discussing specific issues. A communication was then sent out using specific teacher names and asking for information pertaining to these individuals be sent to an LSC email address, implying that this was condoned by the LSC. Lastly, the meeting was not recorded, which is in violation of the Open Meeting Act.
As the elected representatives of the teachers, it is our duty to advocate for the teachers in this building. We would be remiss if we did not make a public, on-record statement about this incident and the implications it has on the teacher community.
The first and biggest implication this has on the teacher community is that the trust between teachers and parents has been broken. Knowing that some parents are soliciting information about teachers under the guise of the LSC creates a tension between the two communities. Teachers have begun to feel uncomfortable and wonder if they will be the next topic of information gathering. This does not create a welcoming environment, but rather one of tension and distrust.
These actions also have a direct impact on the students we serve. When teachers learn that parents are soliciting information about them, it creates fear. Teachers become fearful and uncomfortable that interactions they have with students may lead to parents seeking information amongst their community rather than following proper channels developed by the school and the larger district. This process of information gathering can damage one's career.
The further ramifications from this incident have now strained the relationships that teachers have with parents. While we are aware that not all parents in the community participate in this meeting and following actions, we do not know how far this reached within the parent community. This strains the positive relationships that teachers have worked hard to develop over the years.
The LSC and teacher relationship has been one that has changed over the years. However, as of recent, before these unfortunate events, we believe that it was moving in a positive direction. The actions of the past week have negatively impacted this relationship.
While these actions are troubling, we do feel that there are things that can be done to repair the damage caused by the members of this subcommittee. First, we want to ask the members directly involved in these incidents to step down from this subcommittee. Next, we request the emails that were solicited are made public to the local school council. We want to encourage the parent community to follow what we teach our students. Be an upstander, not a bystander. When you see something unsettling, say something to that person. We also want parents, when facing a problem with a teacher, to use the protocol set forth by both the school and district as a means to solving the problem. Lastly, we want the members of the committee to work and repair the damage caused from this incident with the teachers and staff directly involved.
In closing, we do not and will not condone these acts of bullying behavior and encourage the LSC as a body to repair the damage caused to teachers from this incident and rebuild the trust and relationship with the broader teacher community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? You will see that after PPLC's equity committee. So I think it's a good segue in there. I don't know if folks have any questions or comments before that next section.
I'll wait until you're prepared.
Thanks. So equity committee. So I am the chair of the equity committee, and we meet on a monthly basis. And as Jerry mentioned, there's a chair, there's a secretary, and then we have just a meeting, with the agenda and the minutes are posted afterwards. When so as the chair of the committee, I was not aware of, a couple of things. You're right, we did not record that, and that's a problem. Now, what was shared in the minutes was also, part of me is like, if it was recorded, probably there was going to be another perspective, because what's in the minutes is what everybody sees versus what actually happened live and could have been seen if it was recorded. So that piece there, we need to definitely make sure that going forward, it's reported. Another item is, I was not aware of the fact that this email or this solicitation, I'll call it, had been made. If it was an incident, it was something that was in private between a group of parents. If there had not been the request to send it to the Peirce Equity Committee email address, we would not, personally, I would not have known about it, right? And like you said, it's a subcommittee of the LSC, and therefore the implication is that the LSC is now requesting feedback or comments, or actually soliciting comments from the general population about a particular teacher, or could be a particular incident. So from that standpoint, you're correct, you know, there's that optic there. I have spoken to Jill, so that's the, you know, our secretary, and she was the one that sent out the message to a group of parents, which I'm not part of that group either, right? So there are several parents that are free to create whatever groups they have. And so Jill understands the severity of this. She apologized to me personally, and she wanted to apologize to the group as well.
I think she needs to apologize to the teacher that was harmed as well.
So we'll get to that. So the other thing that I did is reach out to every member of the equity committee to explain to them what had happened and what Jill, you know, what she ended up agreeing to do, which is step down from the committee. So as you know, it's a committee that's made up of, well, maybe people don't know that, but it's made up of parents and members of the LSC. So I chair that group. Raki is also a member, and we have 2 other parents, not including Jill. So we, you know, total 6. Is that 6? Yes, or 5. Sorry, 2 of us.
We need to
Fine.
vote, we need to vote on some of the
So
numbers.
there's a whole
So there's
slew of things that I got to do here. So we need to, so like I said, so Jill has agreed to step down, which makes us 1 member short now. So there will be some discussions about what we do next. One of the things that is important is, again, that the spirit or the creation of this equity committee was long in the making, right? We went through several months trying to figure out how we as a community make sure that we have a conduit for parents to, you know, come in and I guess I'll call it voice their opinion or their worries or whatever you want to call it. I know they can go to the teacher. I know they can go to the administration. Some parents decide to go a different way. And so part of our mission or what we were trying to do was open up, having a forum, if you will, to bring that up. There are rules, I understand that, and especially as it relates to, you know, to public meetings and especially under the purview of the LSC. So not to throw anyone, you know, one way or the other, I was also surprised that that email went out without consultation, right? So from that standpoint, we definitely need to do some educating for the parents and anyone that's a member of the committee. I strongly believe in the mission of that committee, and I think that there's a lot of good that can come out of it, and I'm committed to continuing the work that we're doing there. We will need to do some adjustments and try and make sure that whatever happens or whatever gets done follows rules, but also, you know, beyond the rules, just making sure that people become comfortable. When I say people, it's you, the teachers, and us, the parents, right? It's one more way for us to be a community. It's not one more way for us to break the community. So I think that is important. That's really my goal. And I know it might be lofty, there might be some, you know, there are strong opinions either way, but I want to make sure that the role or the goal of that committee remains intact. And necessarily we're going to need to make some adjustments, and we're going to make sure that the transparency is there and that the confidentiality is there, right? The fact that the name of teachers or staff was released, it doesn't bode well, right?
So will you be willing to make those emails public like we suggested?
So I'm getting to that.
Okay.
So There were no emails that were sent to the inbox.
But there was an email sent out.
No, there
soliciting-
wasn't. There was not an email sent out. So what had happened was Jill sent a private message in a private app to a group of parents, asking them to send full feedback about that teacher and send that feedback to that email inbox.
Was that to like current classroom students' parents, or were they like previous years? Do we know anything about that particular group?
I don't know. What I know is the fact that at the equity meeting, the person that brought up the issue with the teacher is a parent of a former student of that teacher. So this is not something that, to my knowledge, is happening now or happened recently. When I say recently, I mean this school year. So again, the solicitation was made in a private chat group, and it's the internet and
Is that the
things.
mission of this group though, to investigate? Is the mission of the group to investigate teachers?
Which group?
That group.
The subcommittee that we're talking about?
So the discussion, and that's a great question, so thank you. So the short answer is no. The answer that was given to the parents was that the equity committee was gonna get together as a group and send Lori an email saying, we heard this. What is the and what parents were saying was, we have not heard back, or we would like to hear more. And so our job, and that was made clear during the meeting, was that we were going to put together a communication to Lori to ask about what the protocols are and what processes are in place when parents have these types of issues. So it wasn't just a teacher student incident. There was also a student incident or series thereof that were brought up by parents, that their kids were having some issues, and that they had brought it up to the administration, and that some protocols were in place, but the kid was still experiencing bullying. What's that?
Chronic bullying and like ongoing bullying is what they were describing.
Right, so it happened several times.
Yeah.
So according to them, right? And so the discussion revolved around us as a committee sending Lori a note saying, we are hearing this. What happens when these types of things happen? Because from my perspective, and I hopefully from others, there's a series of things that happen, and then there are reactions there too, or at least you can have two parents or two different sets of families that go through a particular event or incident, and the result or the outcomes are different. And in my opinion, it may be because parents are unaware of procedures or things or avenues that exist for them to bring these things up. And so our goal was to ask Lori, hey, what is there that parents can do when these types of things happen? And it could be, again, student teacher incidents, it could be student incidents, whatever the case may be. What is it that we can do? That was the spirit of leaving that meeting. That's where we were going. And then so that's.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah,
I'm sorry. So what I'm hearing a lot of different things here, but I guess the heart of my question is, we can say violate this or violate that. The fact that this was done is so disgusting to me that I want to know if that's the pulse and the relationship that we want to have. So we can talk about OMA, we can talk about this, we can talk about that, but the fact that this was done, is that who we are as a Peirce community? Is that we solicit and slander someone before we even know the facts about it? So, and I'm shaking right now because I'm so aggravated right now, and please excuse me, but like, we could talk about, oh, maybe we could talk about this, we're talking about that, but is the fact that this was done acceptable to us as an LSC? Because if it's acceptable to us as an LSC, then that is not something I could be a part of.
So,
Can I?
Yeah.
Context, I think really what we're talking about is power. Because I appreciate your comments and Jerry's, from the teacher perspective, you're feeling targeted. And from the parents' perspective, they were also feeling trapped, lost, didn't know what to do. So they approached the equity committee with this problem that they're having and wanted to share and figure, our stance was, oh, okay, this is new information to us. We will figure out what we can do to support you. We're beholden to that, right? And we also have no control on hiring, firing, none of that. We were very aware of that. We were clear about that. So that's not at all the point of the equity committee. It's supposed to be a space where we can invite parents to participate. They feel like they have power, which is why they came to us. And it's, from what I hear from the teacher perspective, you feel that we've overstepped. But my question is, what power do we have over teachers as an LC? We don't have any.
I think the way that I'm hearing it though, and maybe I'm wrong. I don't know if the issue is in relation to the meeting itself versus sort of like what happened after by a member of the committee who has now said that they would step down. Sort of like that intentional seeking out of additional information that did not come to the committee doesn't like sit well with people versus, I guess, like the information coming.
Ms. Amy, how do you share the protocols? Isn't there a protocol? That's what I'm confused about, right? There's a protocol that's followed. Can you speak to that? What is the protocol for parents to feel heard? Because parents do need to feel heard. Absolutely. I'm a parent of 3 children myself. But there are protocols in place. Because I don't know anyone here who works for a company, and if there was an HR problem, they would be going to HR. Not to WhatsApp and not to Facebook and not to Instagram. And I'm sorry, I'm very passionate about it. This is people's livelihood. This is people's mouths that they're feeding at their table. So at your company, if you had a problem with someone, would you go right to that person or would you go to HR? So I don't know, maybe you could speak to what the protocols are that could be followed instead of posting on Facebook and posting on WhatsApp and sending text messages. And this person's name and names are now out there. This slandered someone's name. So a teacher's name in here every day to do their job. And yes, there are a group of teachers who are awful. You hear about them in the news. But is that what we have in our community? Because if it was, you wouldn't send your kids here. And that's the truth. So I'd like to know what the protocols are. And I'm going to be quiet before Mr. Chad tells me to be quiet because I'm very upset. So that's why I have to say, obviously you understand. I just feel that we are elected by the teachers and I will not stand by and let a teacher be just slandered like that. Because you know what? Maybe it'll be me in five years from now and I'll be in trouble.
One of these, and I'm not part of the LSC to do that, to see that. But one of the things I had recalled in past meetings is if you have a problem, if you heard problems like that, you take it directly to the person who can handle this problem instead of creating another problem. That's always been my case. Maybe you guys not have experience, and I understand, but that's the situation we try to control. When it's something, even it comes to my door, and like somebody says, I have a situation, I get it directly to the person who needs to be taken care of. Instead of going beyond an investigation, that's not our part. My part is to take it to the person that it hands it, and that Ms. Amy and you guys have her number, we have her number, and I'm not blaming you guys at all. But I'm saying in general, we need to understand that we need to work as a team. And if we are gonna work, that we're not looking for power, we are just looking for the benefit of the students.
Right.
That's what I work for the benefit of everybody. I want to have everybody in a unit. And it hurts me because
I work with them every day. And if I don't have their trust, guess what? My job is not done. So
I just want to add to it. I mean, what I'm hearing is that there's kind of a misunderstanding about like what the equity committee is, right? Like it was used, it sounds like, as like this. It was thought of as like a confidential space to have a conversation about certain people and certain students, but that's not what this is, right? This is a public meeting and a public forum, and whatever's said in that meeting is public information, and we've all agreed, you know, as the LSC and subcommittees of the LSC, not to use names of children or teachers. So I think like we're all on the same page that that was like a mistake, and that's not how the committee should be used, right? So parents and everybody needs to know that moving forward, that this is not a place to bring, there's nothing confidential is happening there. You know, it's not a place to talk about like a specific student or teacher.
And so sort of, I've got lots of thoughts and hopefully I'll be coherent. But one of our norms as an LSC is to always take the work back to student achievement. What can we do to make things better for our students, both academically and social emotionally? And I think we do see evidence of power dynamics in different ways play out in different spaces. But one of the things that I want the equity committee to do is ground them in the equity purpose to practice that was created with the work with Dr. Fisher. So I hope that the committee will do that, because I think there was a lot of support from Dr. Fisher in trying to like move us in a really positive collaborative direction. And there was thought from members of the equity committee in developing the equity purpose to practice. And so how do we live the equity purpose to practice as the schools created one, as the equity committee has created one? And how do we make sure that like agendas and like the structures are put in place to center the needs of students? Because ultimately we're trying to look at equitable outcomes for all students, especially students of color, within the space like of the equity committee. And that was like the goal. And so I hope that we can get back to what the goal is. I hear like the teachers and the concern, and you know, I was part of the PPLC meeting where teachers raised this concern. And I heard Ms. Gableman's statement about sometimes not always feeling supported by administration, right? Like I hear that. But what I always tell people, and I told this to my staff yesterday, I cannot say with 100% confidence that every staff member in this building has always acted with children in their best interests. That doesn't mean every staff member, but we have had staff engage in behaviors that I cannot be in agreement with. And I have to hold staff members accountable to the behaviors that they engage with, just as the LSC, the Board of Education, the staff and the students need to hold me accountable in doing my work. And so that doesn't mean I don't support our teachers. It doesn't mean I don't support our families. It doesn't mean I don't support our students. And just as families are saying they're not always getting the answer that they'd like to hear, right? Or they don't feel like they've been responded to. Maybe it wasn't the answer you wanted to hear, but there was a response or there's an answer. But I mean, I think my like work at the school over time has showed that like I truly try to like take an unbiased approach. And I know that I've got my own faults and I really like am conscious of that and try to work through them. But I really try to center what are the needs of students in every decision that's made. And I think, can we continue to do that? I don't think it's okay what happened to teachers. I was very clear about that to my staff yesterday as well. And as Nate had said, my name's all over Facebook as well. I'm not aware of that, right? But like, I think it's, you know, what are we doing to people? What are we doing to teachers? What are we doing to families? What are we doing to staff? And how can we engage in productive conversations where we can discuss difficult things in a way that will move us together as a community instead of continuing to divide us? And so I hope that families will know, and I actually have this already in my communication to go out to the school community. I'm like recentering the family handbook and the protocols. human resource issues fall in the purview of the principal, not the local school council. And so if there are issues with teachers, with staff members, I need to be made aware of it and I need to be held accountable to that to make sure that I am acting in the best interest of students. And so trying to get that information, like, what's the intention behind that? Is it an intention to try and really center what that student's experience was? I just question the intention behind some of the actions. But I have the communication, I have the handbook that will go out and be reshared. But I just really, we need to work together in order to solve difficult things and to be able to work in collaboration. So I really hope moving forward, we can continue to call out things when they're not right, talk about them, and come up with like a pathway forward. But I think that Matthew in particular, like, has been, like, Matthew's busy, all of you are busy, but Matthew is also busy, right? And so he's making sure to center the needs of the staff in this case by very quickly responding and addressing these things with people when he's got his own job and his own family to like be attending to. And so I appreciate you in the work that you did to really try and like repair harm amongst staff, because that was appreciated by me. I know it was appreciated by the teachers, and we know that this isn't like, Matthew felt guilty that this happened under his watch, and maybe I'm wrong, but I'm just gonna name that. That's what I heard. And he doesn't want, Matthew does not want this to happen in the equity committee, and he doesn't want that relationship with teachers. And so I just appreciate you and the level of swift action you took to address this.
I appreciate that, but again, there are people issues and then there are processes, and I really want us to get back to those processes and have really an open communication when things happen that are harming people, right? I mean, we really need to address them as quickly as we can, and maybe not as passionate as you are, Jerry, you know, because, you know, you've been in this building for much longer than I'll ever be, but I really think that, yes, something happened, but I see a way forward, right? Like, there's, on the off chance that people come here to be genuinely or to harbor hard feelings towards whether it's teachers or parents, I don't think that's who we are. And that's what I really would like us to kind of get back to, right? Because Katie just said it. She said, people come here because it's a great school. It's not because there's zero incidents and there's nothing bad or nothing wrong. It's because they trust the process. I want us to go back to trusting the process. There are going to be discussions. There are going to be things that need to be ironed out. Parents are going to have their own opinions, no matter what. Teachers, same thing. But in the end, it's important that we put these things out there and resolve them together. And I think we can, right? I don't, you know, again, I believe that we can do it, and I really hope that, you know, this is a learning experience for me, and I know that now there's going to be a little more scrutiny on the equity committee, which is great. I want more people to join these calls, right? But you know, somebody told me one time, just pause, understand what's happening, and let's discuss it. So I really hope that we continue the conversation. By the way, there's a meeting next month in April, so it's a monthly meeting. I really hope that folks, you know, try to attend. We want to be a conduit, we want to be a voice, but we don't want it to make it such that now it's whose turn is it to be targeted. That's not the point. That's not the objective, right? So perhaps we also have an opportunity to go back and understand and reframe what's our goal and who are we, what can we do?
You mean the equity committee, right?
What's
The
that?
equity committee, when you say we?
Yes, the equity committee, that's right. Yes.
That alarm was 30 minutes, so I just want to suggest that we move on.
Yeah, sure.
Can I
But
ask
again,
a very quick question? as a
yeah,
voting
of course.
officer?
Yeah.
Do you know why the meeting wasn't recorded? Was it just an oversight? I know
It was an oversight. That's right. That's correct. We all got onto the Zoom meeting and we just got going right away. There was.
So I understand wanting to move on, and I get that because I haven't been home since o'clock this morning either, so I get that. but I'm not comfortable moving on until we at least have some type of closure, like. I know that not every member is here, but Mr. Chad and I did ask for, like certain things to be considered. So I'd like to know if those things will be considered. And if so, how are we gonna be followed up? How is that repairing of harm gonna start to follow up? How are we gonna do that?
Sure.
And maybe you can't answer that right now, but I'd like to know maybe a timeline of when that can be answered.
Right.
I also want to say that I know that I sound very passionate about it, but there's things that I take very seriously, and in all, this trickles down to the students and the environment that students are in. So that's where the passion comes from, Matthew, is that all in all, this needs to be good, like mom and dad need, or, the family needs to be good to have. So that's where the passion comes from. So just moving forward, I'd like to know, like, to the statement that Evan and I made, what are some next steps that will be taken?
Sure. I think that makes total sense. I mean, I think that so as I mentioned, so the first thing, the most immediate thing is, again, Jill, I explained the situation to her. She understands what was done. She understands that it was not the right thing to do, and she apologized. And she also stepped down
Will she
from the committee.
be seeking out to apologize to staff members involved?
So I can share that with her, but hopefully you understand that it's not up to me, the response that we're gonna get back. So I am very comfortable reaching out to her and sharing that with her. And for what it's worth, she has, since we had that conversation, she has reached out several times to apologize for what has happened. So I just didn't want to mention that. So other points, I'm sorry, there's a few things. So if you want me to, we can just go through it line by line. And
Well,
just
I can
kinda
send a
get back.
copy of this to
Yeah,
you.
if you want to send that out.
And then just like, in what time frame do you need to respond to how we'll be moving forward with?
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna take that much time. I mean, we just need to get together as a group, like, that letter that I was talking about earlier, right? Just kind of got stopped because of all of this. But essentially, that was a similar question, right? Like, so what are the protocols? What are the kinds of things that parents can refer to when these types of incidents happen? And again, we made it clear that that's our purview, right? We cannot be taking or giving the appearance that we're taking sides. Oh my God, we got this thing going on, and we're gonna line it up and go into it. It's our role is to, again, pause, really hear what the concern is, and really work with you all to understand what's in place and what can we do. And it may be that, at this point in time, we've exhausted all possible options, and, then folks, really, it's up to the parents to decide that, right? Like, we can't, as a body of the school, make that decision for them. But I really strongly believe in that mission and giving people that avenue. Yes, we definitely need to make sure that, as a parent, or if there are concerns, that those be brought up to the persons or the people who are involved. But hopefully you understand that sometimes not everyone is comfortable doing that. Now, while we don't want to be the one sort of putting or carrying on people's burden, if people come to us, to me, it shows a little bit of a level of trust. And we really want to nurture that, if you will. And when I say that, it's just not just from the parents' side, right? It's also from your side. So working together is definitely what I want to see, and I hope that we can achieve that.
May I also say that, it sounds like these parents that are bringing up these issues have they been talking to their children about this? Like, about how this teacher is acting in school and stuff, or are they just observing with their own eyes from what they see? Because this student literally talks to them for 7 hours a day, and the parent is bringing it up and probably maybe over exaggerating it or under exaggerating it, but also, like, it's something that this they need to really talk about with their child instead of observing and bringing it and then making a whole big deal about it.
I think you bring up a very, very excellent point, right? We have, as you know, we have 3 kids. There's one that's in your grade and one that's in 6th and one is pre-K. Depending on who I'm talking to, right? And these kids have different, my oldest son, you know him very well, right? So depending on who I'm talking to, right, my reaction might be different, right? And, frankly, let's face it, our kids are our most precious asset. So when a kid comes to me, or as a parent, if my child comes to me and says something, I can understand that sometimes there might be just straight trust, right? The kid came to me because there was something that happened. To your point, there might be some perspective to be added, right? Because this is what the kid or the child is feeling at the time, and was very, first of all, the parents should be lucky that the kid went and shared that. But hopefully that sort of starts the conversation, right? And it doesn't just gonna end it. And that's really what I think I'm hoping that we can do, right? Like the question about whether that behavior was observed, I don't have an answer to that. I don't think that was shared, and perhaps it was. And Rocky, I don't know if you have more there.
I just wanted to say, there can be a duality. The harm was done to teachers, and I hear that, feel that. And for what it's worth, I was a CPS teacher, so maybe that matters, maybe it doesn't. But also, the parents came to us because they felt also they were harmed. So I think in this situation, I have the benefit of both points of view right now. And so both things can be true.
Right, and I mean, I think that's kind of what Ella was going after here, right?
I've also, it's just surprising me because I've never met a teacher or staff member at this school that would ever do anything harm anyone.
That's why Katie said everybody wants to be here.
Yeah.
Right, and I'm bringing it down to a basic level, but that's what I'm hearing, right? And so that we establish, so we, the teachers, the community, everybody's worked hard to make this what it is, right? So can we build on that, understanding that there are problems, there are issues.
I wonder if maybe something that might be beneficial to the teacher perspective would be in working to find a remedy, possibly having, Jerry's asking principals, Amy, about like protocols. And if this could be even generally addressed in a communal way by stating in so much what we're saying about that as a community, we don't advocate, bullying teachers and risking their livelihoods or questioning their care for their students. And if you have concerns about incidents happening in the classroom, you can go at your Lori, you're talking about the handbook. So maybe even just having some language about, you can refer to this, the proper channels for addressing things are X, Y, and Z. And we as a community, we're here to support the teachers who are supporting our children. I don't know if that would be something that would help in creating some transparency of like acknowledging harm was done while also working to create avenues so that it won't happen again. And especially if a parent felt that there was harm and they came to the equity committee, they probably didn't know that there's X, Y, and Z in place. So being able to address it might.
Right. And that's the spirit of the letter that we had drafted. We try and make sure that there's, I won't call it a menu, but like if something happens, where are we? So to kind of get to that point, so Jerry, yeah, so if you share that, then we will prepare the response. And
can we request a resolution or a something from the equity committee, but at your next meeting, is that? I mean, it's.
I think that's
couple weeks away.
I think that's a very reasonable request, and, you know, I expect there to be more discussion, whether in public or, you know, between members, to just make sure that we get to a point where we can see that there's some forward movement. That's really, I really would like that, yes.
That's 40 minutes. I have a procedural question. And we can pin this, and if it's an offline conversation, but I feel like it should be an hour. So in terms of sort of, I don't know, redefining is the right word, the purpose of that LSC equity committee, or edifying it. Who does that? When is that done? We do that. Yeah. So is that next meeting? I just want to like kind of set the next step for that too.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, right now, we know what we need to do. What we need to establish is who does it and how fast, right? Or, so I think that we have at most until next meeting to come up with something, but I think that between now and then, and there's also going to be another equity meeting, which, by the way, I'd like to encourage folks to attend if you can.
I think some teachers will attend.
And so I think it's gonna be, you know, I think it's gonna be a great opportunity to exchange, right? Like I do understand that there's passion, but let's make sure we also understand where the passion is coming from, right? It's because people have something that they want to communicate, and on all perspectives, right? So, so between now and the next equity meeting and the next LSC meeting, there is going to be, you know, we should expect some communications and at least some kind of response to, you know, to what Jerry and Evan have brought up. As far as us putting together that letter and sharing it with you, I still think that there's value in that. I think, you know, it's already written. I mean, you know, Raki can keep me honest here, but we do want to share it. And we're now short one member. So again,
I think it would be great to have a teacher as part of the equity committee to help with this multiple week collaboration.
and by the way, I want to mention the fact that, and Nicole's gonna crucify your throat, bananas or tomatoes, but you know, we're the only committee that actually meets on a monthly basis with an agenda, with a thing. Well, we didn't record it, so my apologies there, but I feel that we really are putting together the environment or the space for this to be successful, so. All right. I'm done, Nicole. You're good?
One principal evaluation, I wonder.
Sorry, just to touch on, because I do think you made a very important point, Jerry, that the impact of this person's actions does impact the relationship between teachers, students, teachers, LSC. And so I'm wondering if on a larger scale from LSC, if this is something that we need to cover in order to help repair harm done amongst the relationship. And so I don't know if that's a letter.
Signing on that statement.
I don't, yeah, that would be
Yeah.
appropriate.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
I'm gonna
Would
send
you like
this-
to take the lead on that as the LSC communications person?
Yeah.
It's called Ali. All right. Very good. But thank you again. I know this was not a particularly exciting topic, but I really enjoy the fact that we were able to talk about it. We're gonna be talking about it some more. So we really appreciate everybody's input.
Can I say one last thing?
Yes, of course. 50
Sorry.
minutes.
But I think a point in our statement that is incredibly important is we teach our students every single day to be upstanders. And we heard from in public participation that Ms. Amy's name was being spoken negatively about on social media. We know of instances of teachers' names being spoken about negatively on social media. If you see something as a parent that is not okay, please call it out. Be an upstander, talk to that person. Like, this is our livelihoods, and our livelihoods could be ended like that. And that's a very scary thing to come to school and come to work every day, knowing is an action that I do today going to be talked about on a public forum that could end my career. And I love teaching. I've wanted to be a teacher since I was 10 years old. It's all I've ever wanted to do. And I love being in this building. I love the community that we have. And I would hate to have that ended because someone got angry and posted my name in social media or in a public platform.
I want to say regarding the Facebook posts, this is not to toot my horn, but just I stepped in to remind people that you have to follow CPS protocols regarding the branch incident, just because I think sometimes when people haven't been a part of CPS for as long as some of us have, they don't realize, you know, there's some independence CPS principals have in certain ways, but then there are these overarching communication protocols, response protocols that you have to follow. And I wanted people to know that you did, you know, I was confident that you did. So.
It's also common decency that should be followed as well.
All right. Next item on the agenda, much to Nicole's delight, is principal evaluation. We don't, I mean, there's, you know, we went through that process a couple months back. There are no follow-ups. All the paperwork that needs to be filed was filed. There's really nothing there. Bylaws.
No update, but I think we want to update something, right, with the communication. Goal at some point. Just to keep that on our radar.
All right. Very good, thank you. Moving on down to old business. Number one, quarterly update on racial equity data. I think we talked about this. So last meeting, unfortunately, Lori wasn't able to make it. She shared some of that information on this report here. I really look forward to seeing that on a regular basis. And so hopefully that resource that you have over there can continue to help us with that. I don't know if people had any questions about the racial equity data and or disaggregation, because I think we got that pretty much covered in what Lori shared.
But I do have a question, because I stated my question for the LSC last time, but Principal Zini wasn't there.
Yeah.
About further data points that are disaggregated, so if I could just take a couple of minutes to let you know what I asked. So I had referred to the LSC Equity Committee meeting in September that Dr. Fisher had visited, and you were on leave. And so Mr. Lee was at that meeting, and Dr. Fisher was giving her CIWP audit to that committee. And what I honed in on was there was a conversation, I forget what prompted it, but Mr. Lee shared, and I'm stating it exactly how I remember it, because I don't think he elaborated on what data, but he said that rate bands on a 5-week cycle examine data and disaggregate various ways, including race, EL status. And Dr. Fisher said, hey, that's great. Do the parents here in this meeting know that this is done? I said, no, I don't. This is great to know. So my rather long-winded question is, along with disaggregated discipline data, she urged us to be transparent, or you to be transparent about what is being disaggregated, sort of as a first point of, you know, then how do we also then learn about what's being done about disparities, whether they're racial, whether they're LGBT status, you know, EL status, et cetera. So I don't know what the data points were that Mr. Lee was referring to, but
yeah, there's so many different ones, and they could be like different ones at different points in the year. So in 3rd through 8th grade, for instance, every 5 weeks, we've tried to look at grading data at the end of the 5-week period, because it's like the progress report in the report card. And so that's been like a pretty consistent one in making sure that we've got plans. We have not seen, we have not like shared. The focus in the grade levels has been classroom and student specific data. So we have not shared like data as like a whole school or by grade level related to grades. We can, I mean, that's something that we can do. I was doing that with on track data in prior years with the LSC. So grading data, attendance data can be looked at. We have not been looking as intentionally at attendance data in all of those 5-week cycles. Some of that has been the attendance team looking at it and then trying to like create action plans. But then we also have our STAR 360 data in 3rd through 8th grade, which is taken 3 times a year. So teachers would have looked at that. Beginning of the year, middle of the year. In K2, we have iReady data that would have been looked at beginning of the year, middle of the year. In preschool, TS Gold data is at different points and not always at the same time frames. And so like there's been like different points in these like 5-week data check-ins. Our next data check-in is next week, and the focus of that is actually going to be around our MTSS work with Branching Minds, which is the MTSS platform, and making like continuing to support teachers in understanding how to like log interventions from a tier 2 perspective. In that, I guess what would be, so this is where I think collaboration with the equity committee would be really good. Where do we want to like anchor our data review? Like we know that student discipline data is one that we wanted to anchor in and like report back regularly on. What are the other data points that we really want to like hold on to? We've also been struggling with what are like valid data points, just because there's been so much change in assessment systems. So this was the first year that we're using iReady in K2, and we've run across some challenges with it. This is the second year that we're using STAR 360 in 3rd through 8th grade. So I guess like what are the data points that we really want to utilize?
Which is important for the CIWP conversation.
Correct.
as well, right?
Correct. And so I think like there's some like fuzziness right now with this, but I really believe that as we like engage in the CIWP process, things will become clearer, and like through these collaborative conversations, we'll be able to identify where do we want to really anchor ourselves.
Dr. Fisher said something about, like you're saying, 2 or 3. data
Yeah,
points to do one
because
over
otherwise
the-
it's too much and it's overwhelming.
Right, and you can be data rich and information poor.
Correct.
groups, Yeah.
Correct.
The other thing is, and this is a conversation I could have with you later, but I'm reading this amazing book called Street Data. Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
So I wanted to mention part of that. It's about the on the ground, data that you learn from watching students or listening to students, or it's more qualitative than shape.
I have the book. I haven't yet read it. Shannon Dimatello, my resident last year, she shared that one with.
I'm whipping through it because it's so phenomenal. It's an amazing book. Thank you.
All right. Any other comments on old business? All right, we're gonna move.
So, I'm sorry, it's not on the agenda, but
Yeah.
the, like Andersonville fair that we talked about last time.
I have a meeting set with David Oakes, and then we'll figure out it.
Great, thank you.
Like David Oakes is his name?
Yes,
That's over.
Yeah, David.
that's correct. We'll move on to new business. Starting with item A, screen time during mealtime. I try to be inventive, like rhyming. Racky, I think you had some.
All right, so I'm gonna say what the have been said. So yeah, parents started to reach out to Keith and I about questions about the use of screen during mealtime. And then Coach Jackson communicated to us sort of the schedule of how mealtime is organized, how much time children spend eating and talking, and then recess, and then the last 15 minutes, from what I understand, is children are given a choice and offered PBS kids. I don't know if that's through a tablet or so that information parents didn't have when they circulated on their own a survey. And I want to just decenter myself. I was just the conduit between the parents and Coach Jackson. But there were 36 parents that just kind of signed a very straightforward Google survey that just said, what are your thoughts on this? Trying to get their point of view. And so I'm just going to share a couple of like sort of bullet points, and I have them in our folder. So if anybody wants to read through them more fully, you're welcome to. So parents just kind of talked about how concerned they were. Again, they didn't know that the lunchtime schedule, they didn't know the specifics of how lunchtime is scheduled, and that the last 15 minutes is when children are given a choice. So I don't know the background knowledge that parents had when they filled this out, but nevertheless, this is what they wrote. They would like to limit screen time in advance of curriculum learning. Which ones to share? There's a comment about how children are dysregulated when they're on screens, and they would like it to be not given as an option. Prefer children to be eating first, which sounds like what's happening. Safely interact, play, and socialize with friends. Shouldn't be a part of their daily routine. Concerns about kids being too distracted to eat. Yeah, so there's a comment on here about if our children are exposed to screen time, it seems to dysregulate our kid. Our 7-year-old presents lower levels of frustration and tolerance, and more impulse after engaging in screen. So I'll share these comments with you, but there's a lot of comments, and I really think that this seems to be a bigger conversation about technology and when and how it's used. And I wonder, I don't know what the parents feel about this piece of information about it being used the last 15 minutes of the mealtime. Now, I would want to know what do they think about that now that they know that. To me, it feels like a false choice when you give a child a choice to either engage in PBS Kids or read a book or draw. But also, I want to take myself out of it. It still seems problematic to me, but I don't know what the parents have to say. But I really do think this is a longer, more deeper conversation about when are children exposed to screen, how often, when is it being used in a way that supports learning, or is it being used in a way that's passive? Why is it a part of recess?
And what's the content? And I asked that because I remember when my son was in pre-K, I had a similar concern hearing his account of watching PBS Kids, and later learned that it was indoor recess and it was physical stuff for them to do, rather than sitting and watching a cartoon. So I just wonder what your input is on that.
Well, and I can input a little bit too, that, I mean, I know that, I think Rocky, you had some very valuable input as well as with some research surrounding screens. I know that having, just anecdotally having 2 6-year-olds, and I do feel strongly about, maybe as an adult, from an adult mind of like, this is very structured and it's just this little thing, I think neglects the prevalence of the space it can occupy in their brain. I know some of the parent concerns were that kids were coming home, not eating very much of their lunch. And so I think it's something, I think maybe it is a broader conversation, but I can totally understand how a kid would be, like, they'd have those first 30 minutes, but they're really just thinking about the last 15 and maybe not focusing on the food in front of them. And I know for my kids in particular, it's like, if that's even on the table, you're just dealing with so many other emotional and dysregulating things. And I think I guess I'm less afraid of overstepping here, that, because I do feel like what I'm hearing from other parents and what I feel personally is that, that I don't understand why it's a part of lunch, to have it be a part of it. Yeah, I don't understand why it would be an option. When we have seen this amount of response of parents expressing concern, and that this is the second time within the school year. I remember earlier, the LSC had talked about it, and it almost seemed like it was taken care of or something. And then I know when parents came to me about it this second time, it's almost like, I thought this was dealt with. So I guess that's maybe some frustration too, is that it feels like there's not transparency, or like parents don't actually know, and then we're hearing from the kids. And I know for my kids too, if there's something about like, oh, well, this kid gets to pick something because they get done first, or, there's just like all this information that you're trying to understand for 6-year-olds. And underlying all of it, it's like, why is this an option around their meal?
Can I ask, have you gone to teachers and had that conversation with the teachers?
The parents have,
And what have they heard?
actually, sorry, they've had that conversation with Coach Jeff.
Yeah, I think
Because
in my experience, they're usually deferred to
Yeah.
the coach.
I think the communication was directly with him.
And I think that's what happened earlier in the year.
Yeah,
When
yeah.
it came up more broadly.
And he communicated, and he responded, to us. Very.
Well, why not go into the teacher?
No,
The teachers don't do lunch.
they don't do lunch.
The
The teachers aren't there at that time. It's the lunch coach at that
But
time.
I'm sorry if I don't wanna be like, not understanding, but I think the teachers need to know. Right?
Right,
I mean,
they do.
if my kid, something's going on in their class, even though when it's at lunchtime, I'm not saying, but I will at least say, email the teachers, this is going on. Because, I've been observing kids, for lunch as well. And one of the things that, the recent sport managers, and if we see a kid that is not eating, we let the teacher know, and when we see their parents, we say, hey, by the way, I have seen in action when I say, by the way, your daughter, for whatever reason, is not eating. And some of them is like, I'm talking about the little ones. And even the other grades, we just pass it along to the parents when they get picked up. And that's from my own personal experience. So I go back to the same thing. I think we are not leading the people to be more proactive and get more answers. Rather than wait we got 30 parents, we just have none. We wouldn't be just directly to appoint to the teacher. And I'm sure the teacher will say, hey, listen, I have this concern, these parents don't want my kid to be PBS, and a lot of them is like, they're like indoors. Fortunately, we had some
Oh, yes.
that days that they cannot go out. So those are the times where they got more games, they got one-on-one playing. I mean, it's not just PBS every day. I mean, in my own personal.
I just wanna say, I think like as a school, we agree we don't want kids on screens. So for a long time, the pre-K and K teachers didn't even want a TV or any sort of like technological device, not even a computer, an iPad in the classroom. As a result of the pandemic, we have seen an increase in the use of technology, especially in the younger grades. One of the challenges that we currently have is that we designed the lunch and recess block for kindergarten and first graders to be 45 minutes. What we're realizing is that's too long. And so we're finding that there's this like 10-15 minutes at the end of lunch where we have coaches who are not teachers, they're not teacher assistants. Some are very strong, but some of them really are sort of struggling with like, how do they manage a class of 5-year-olds and do it in a meaningful way. And so they are resorting to some technology, and it's maybe not ideal or what we want. And that's not like a long-term plan. So it's currently, yes, it's happening right now. It's not what we want to see happen. And I've got ideas on how to switch that for next school year. And it's Coach Jackson has said, like, he said it's really not that frequently that it's happening. Beginning of the year it was. And there were some people that were putting the TV on during mealtime. And so that has definitely changed. So I think when people are saying this started beginning of the year, why haven't things changed? They have, it's just, it looks differently than it did beginning of the year. But we agree, this is not like a good long-term solution. And so I do hope that if families are experiencing very specific things to their kid, again, being child-centered, like if they're noticing a certain behavior with a child, to reach out to, like even myself, Ms. Munoz, if they don't know who the coach is, I really try not to like put too much of this on the teachers, because they are dealing with a lot of other things, and we really don't want teachers to have to manage lunch. But the teachers know the kids and they have that direct family connection. And so in some cases it's very helpful. So I just hope that, please encourage families if they're noticing very specific things with like individual students to like reach out so that we could try to like problem solve around it. But then, I mean, my daughter was 5, she's 17 now, and she didn't eat her lunch in kindergarten either. And she came home very hungry. And thankfully my mom would pick her up and she had a snack ready for her when she came home. And so some of it is sort of like the struggle of like getting young children to eat. And that was without technology in the classroom. And so 5-year-olds just, they enjoy the socializing, they enjoy the talk, and sometimes it takes 3 hours to eat breakfast.
Are we keeping kindergarten and first graders eating in their lunches like permanently, or will they be going to the cafeteria?
We cannot, there's like, based on our schedules, with the use of both gyms, like we can't even have the kids go in there.
That was the question, the time breakdown again, how much do they get for recess and then how much do they get for this?
So they have a 30-minute, I think, like a 30-minute lunch break that is teacher supervised, followed by a 45-minute lunch period that is coach supervised. And so they have an hour and 15 minutes, which is too much time according to like the district's guidelines anyway. And so of that time, the kids are going to pick up their food, walking back to the classroom, they're washing their hands. So some of that is transition time. And then it's like they have their like 30-minute meal time, or 25, 30 minutes, depending on, what time to get. And then there's like 10 to 15 minutes at the end where the coaches are like, this is too long.
Is that CPS mandated?
No.
Or is that something that can be done at the school?
That's where we need for next school year in developing schedules. I want to reduce their period at 20. So in the past, it was a 45-minute recess and lunch, and that was way too short.
Yeah.
And so we tried to, in the pandemic, it was lengthened to 45 minutes. We're finding that's too long. Kind of like the Goldilocks and the Three Bears, right? And so we're realizing that 30 minutes is probably ideal. And so how can we have students have a 30-minute recess, a 30-minute lunch, and then their specialist classes, and then the rest of their days? So we know when we need to fix.
This is super productive conversation, and to be fully transparent, parents approached me, and then I said, okay, well, I don't unilaterally decide what happens during lunch, so why don't you just, can you get more parents to tell you what they think, and can you create some sort of a consensus and give me some more data to offer. And yeah, and as a parent, like when progress reports come home, I prepare less. I just want to know how much of your lunch did you eat? That's the number one thing that I ask. So yeah, it's important.
And so to wrap it up here, and so that I'm clear, principal thing you're saying, if there's very specific concerns that a parent's having about it, then you want them to come to you.
I would say myself, Ms. Munoz, the coach, like somebody like, who is the person that the family member feels comfortable reaching out to? Like, and then we can figure out like who needs to be a part of that conversation to come to resolution.
And also with the information that the parents didn't have,
You communicated?
I don't know, I don't know, like, that information was shared, I had a parent reach out to me earlier, and she said she was gonna share it with the Facebook page. So I don't know, maybe however this information, I don't know like how this all got going and like who got the form, but I think whoever got the form, it would be helpful to send that information to me.
I'll put it in the top, and also maybe in the floor.
So do the parents, so are we saying no TV at all? Is that, I'm sorry, did I?
Oh, no, yeah, go ahead. I'll go after you.
No, I was trying to understand so I understand there was a survey that was sent out.
Yeah.
So-
Something I just created.
So there were questions in the survey or was
It was really just your name and it's, yeah. and-
Yeah, so open-ended.
Input about.
Okay,
And I think most people that were signing it they don't want to have screens. I don't
Got
think anybody was saying, I don't know, I didn't look at all of it,
No one
but
said they wanted, but
Yeah.
they were operating under the assumption that that kids were watching during meals.
well,
I would assume they would still take issue with the last 15-minute
Yeah.
option, but I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, like, right now, like, I would say that, yes, that's not ideal either, but we're also dealing with like multiple things at one time.
And lunch coaches.
Yeah,
turnover.
it's a bigger like problem than like having a right now solution.
no, I would say I'm comfortable responding to those who signed with information, with the Coach Jackson's schedule. So that at least there's more understanding of when it's taking place.
Well, and because it's not a school-wide situation, it's just kindergarten through first grade, I think like.
This really isn't just kindergarten. I don't
I
think
know,
it's.
I actually asked my first grader, because when all this is.
Yeah.
Being shared, I was like, just curious, that he had never mentioned anything to me, he had said that in his classroom they do it too,
Okay.
but,
Yeah.
but.
Somebody mentioned the first grade.
Yeah.
too, So I don't.
Yeah, I know too that. You have a lot on your plate, teachers have a lot on their plate. Mr. Jackson, you know, the coaches, like you were saying, some aren't well versed in, managing 5-year-olds for the last 15 minutes. So I wonder about if parents have ideas to share, to propose to you, like if there's a way to ask them, just in the spirit of collaborative problem solving until next year, we can shorten that time and hopefully that problem goes away.
I wanted to ask too about the solution for next year with the 30 minutes. Would that mean that no screen time, like with that? Okay.
thank you, everyone. Next one is safety at a pre-K branch. I know we had a couple of parents that made statements and stuff, so I don't know that I need to summarize what happened there, so I think we just can get right into it. Folks have questions, comments,
I would just like to hear from Ms. Amy.
Yeah, so I can share. So one is that it happened very quickly and it was like, I had no idea what was going on, to be honest, until closer to like 8 a.m. And even then, we didn't really know what was going on. Ms. Munoz had gotten like a text message from a staff member at the branch. She was going to try and figure out what was happening. And so like the priority was on making sure that like students and staff were in a position to learn at school. And so like in terms of like timeline of communication, I was actually pretty proud of like the time that it took to get the communication out. Because generally these emails come out at like 6, 7 o'clock at night. And the fact that it went out even like during the school day and to have gotten a response from safety and security that quickly, I was like, this is pretty great that the district has responded so quickly. There are protocols. I cannot just send a communication out about that like on my own. It does need collaboration. However, I think what you had said, what is your name again? Marietta. What Marietta said in terms of like wanting to have like an earlier communication, that's something that I have shared that feedback with Jadine Chow, Safety and Security. Her and I were in touch that morning. And what she has said is that the district is working on very quick guidance with very like quick responses that principals can just pull from so that communications can go out earlier and not having to wait until there is a communication that is approved. So the district is aware of this. Alderman Osterman is aware of this. He's worked in close collaboration with Jadine Chow as well. And there is that commitment from the district, and they've been in the process of developing this because there's more and more need for this community-wide communication to go out. Ultimately, like, people want to make sure that their children are safe, like, as do I. And so that's always like the focus for us as a school, is ensuring the safety of students. And I understand like families wanting, like, and being like sort of like aware and concerned about delivering their child to school and like wondering, are they going to be safe when they're there? It's precious cargo. And I understand like the needs of the community. And moving forward, Alderman Osterman has basically said, look, work with your families, see what ideas they have, present some ideas. He's very happy to support the school, advocate on behalf of the school to the district, to the city, to like figure out some like longer term plans. There's a long history with the branch and how we got there, which I don't want to necessarily go into now, but we will be able to address that during the family meeting next week. I think there's always opportunity to reflect and like work on moving forward. What Nate said is really important though. Nate had said, we need to realize that this was a 15-year-old that was shot. And so there's a bigger issue of gun violence in the city. And we understand like the concern about like student safety, but there was a 15-year-old that was shot. And so how do we sort of like also center that in our conversations and not lose sight of the impact of gun violence on our communities? So I don't know, you all probably have a lot of other questions. I'm exhausted, it's almost 9 o'clock. So I don't even know that I can think straight right now, but please ask questions.
There were other questions or I guess prompts around the physical sort of setup of the branch. I'm not familiar with it. I've never been there. So are there things that, I don't know if that will be a conversation with the alderman around like physical barriers, you know, in case there is a car? You
Yeah,
know,
there are ways. Vic with a G.
With the sheet.
Sorry. Vic has like proposed some like barriers or like planter boxes that I think are really great, you know, possible solutions. And so I encourage Vic to, you know, and I think in the meeting, like, what are like other ideas that could potentially be used? So.
In terms of the communication and kind of, yeah, wanting a message like earlier on. So there's no protocol that would allow for that at this stage, like.
We didn't really know what was going on to even like.
I guess, but if there was, if there was a situation where the kids couldn't go to school, like we would have gotten a message, right? So.
Potentially,
Yeah.
potentially, right? And, or it would have, might have been you showed up and we're told you need to take your kid home, or we need to receive your kid and take them to an alternative safe location. And so the thing to contextualize is we're a large school with a large staff and there's a ton of things happening, especially around entry. And like, I don't get here at 6:30 in the morning, right? I get here closer to 7:45 in the morning. I'm dropping my own daughter off at school prior to coming. And so there's just a lot like getting that information and really understanding what's going on. We don't always have it right away. I will say that the alderman was on site that morning, and he had called me like a little while. I can't remember at what point, but he had called me at some point that morning to like say, this is like what's going on. And I had, you know, gotten some information from Kristen, but it was very like unclear as to what was going on.
I guess, how does what happened like compare with the lockdown situation? Like if there was a lockdown, is there like an email that is associated with that, or?
If there was a lockdown, one would be ensure the safety of students and staff first. Communication is not the first thing that we're focused on, it's what's in front of us right now. That's what we have to focus on first. And I know that like families want that, but that's not always possible, like in that moment, given that like we don't have 1,000 arms.
Just to want to just I was the fortunate one security at the time that when I arrived to the building, I was not even working. It was around 7:10 that I arrived at the parking lot. As I walked to the building, I noticed that there was already an incident occurred. So my first thought was going to the corner, Bremer and Broadway. I observed what was going on. Fire department, police were already on the way. There were people assisting the family. My main concern is I look around the glass windows, nothing was damaged. Right away, I went inside. I asked the staff in there, everybody's okay. Well, what happened? Because we didn't hear anything. So immediately I went to the rooms that I thought it could be, and everything was intact. There was no necessary action. My next action was I called the office and I asked them, you know, the situation that had happened, it was not directly to the building. There was no threat. There was no safety concern for the kids to come in. I spoke to one of the officers. They said, well, we're gonna put this tape in order for them to not to worry about it. There's no safety concern. And I'm sure you guys as a parent, you know, guys are right. As much as you guys get information, I didn't have time to go and ask them what happened, how did it happen. Because it was not my part. My part was the safety of the students and the staff. So that to be clear, they sent Ms. Munoz around before 7:30. As the kids were coming in, Ms. Munoz was there with me. And the teachers, you all brought in the kids. We make sure I stay outside, waiting. And we have officers come in and tell us that we were safe, that nothing was going on, not to worry about it. And then all the protocols start going on. Information went to the principal, Ms. Munoz. Then we follow up, older men show up and just want to make sure that we are okay. Tell him everything was okay. He stood there and made sure that I asked him to remove the car and move the scene out of the corner of us, and they said they were willing to do it as soon as they can, and they did it. So long story, I get that. I've been standing in that corner. I've been putting a lot of thought. One of the main things I do is I've always worked prevention. For me, prevention is my goal in every situation. The branch has one of the greatest things is cameras. Cameras everywhere. Kids are coming in two different doors in order not to create a lot of traffic and those two corners. And I see your point about when the parents get off on Broadway, there's some parents people try to make a right turn. So it's many things that they can be done to control better the traffic. Now, again, Broadway is a major street, so it's a very, but I reassure you that in any way that I say that any safety of your kids, I would be the first one to call the office and say, we send the kids over there. But there was, like again, there was no threat. There was no stuff that were in the middle of it. Everything happened before. Like 15 minutes before the kids got to the school. The first group, which is arrived around 7:30. The early ones, and then the rest of them arrive at 8 o'clock. Unfortunately, there's something that we cannot create. It could be around our backyard, around our corners, but in any street. It could happen anywhere. It so happened, it happened near us, but the school was no threat, and I've never seen no. The police department came in and stormed the place, and they took over the investigation, and the central office came in and helped out right away. So I saw all the protocols and channels that were there, and thank you for saying me for sending everybody. I was more overwhelmed trying to take care of all the people that, on CPS, they were there. But again, You know, those are situations when we have to react on. Many parents asked me what happened. I didn't have no answers to tell, and I'm not the person who communicate anything that, you know, is not official. If the officers there can say anything, it's their job, not us, you know. For us, all the information goes to the principal, and the principal related to the office, and that's the channel we go. But again, I just want to tell you, I'll be the first one to do my life for you kids. And my goal is every kid go home safe. Then I can be home and say, I did my job. So this school has a great people, good security people, they're always on top of it. So by that, I mean, not just because I'm part of it, but I mean, all the, even parents, they're very aware of everything, and I like that. Right, so I have a question about
Safety and security at the district level, have they explored like a mass texting kind of thing to parents? It seems like this issue in particular was less about the communication to the parents, more about maybe the communication from CPD to the school to you to then the parents, but I'm just curious, like, if texting has ever been. I don't know.
She's the person who answered that, Jadine Chow, I forgot how to pronounce it.
It just seems like that. If you're there and you're like, oh.
one of the things that I'm gonna be honest, I didn't have time to text. I make a phone call. Be honest, because I said my report be like around 8:30, 9, when I was able to have time. You know, you have to be very aware that first, in any incident, I'll probably be more aware of the parents. And I saw, I know a parent, he decided to, he thought about it, you took your kid, right? Yeah, so, yeah, and I respect that, and I appreciate it, and, you know, but, I was just amazed at how I didn't even have to call the fire department, police, they were very ready on the way, so. The alderman was so he's even willing to work with any ideas as well. That's why he mentioned it. So I'm sorry, Ms. Amy, if I didn't reach out to you, but I reach out to whoever.
There's so much that happens very quickly.
Yeah.
So safety and security of the students and staff is first and foremost.
But I want to say, Ms. Munoz arrived as Assistant Iverson. She was right in my back when I was like already start getting the kids in around before 8 o'clock. Yeah. So, I know I would never want to have any of you kids going through that scenario. And that was, I didn't see no threat to either the building, the staff, or the kids. And they had a good time. You know, kids are kids, but I mean, they went in real quick. They had questions, like every kid has, and the one question they asked me is, what you did to Justin?
Everybody wants Justin. They want Justin.
And so I didn't do that today, but yeah, to be honest, that's yeah.
25 minutes on new business.
Well, thank you again, and again, I want to thank the parents for coming forward with the comments and all that. I appreciate that there's going to be additional conversations about this. I think it's gonna, I understand it's probably gonna be a longer process, right? From my perspective, it's also like when I think about CPS in general, right? So I'm really glad that all those parties are on board to at least discuss it, right? And try to figure out what we can do. So any other questions, any comments about this? Okay. Just wanted, so the next item, we wrote it down as protocols for addressing incidents, right? So students, parents, teachers, staff. I know Laura, you had shared a couple of items here. And I think we discussed some of this as part of the equity committee and, you know, the conversation that's been going on there. One of the things I think we've talked about, and I don't mean to put you all on the spot, communications committee, but like, you know, in terms of having like a repository of where parents can go to find stuff, I'll call it that way, right? So, you know, something happens, or even, you know, in the event of the incident, what can we expect, or, you know, or even the LSC, what is the LSC, you know, these types of things, you know, understanding what people can and cannot do, right? And even if some of it might be trivial, I guess I'll call it, you know, like, so what's the LSC, or, you know, what are you doing against bullying? You know, if things like that, if they're laid out somewhere that we can all access. I mean, that's just kind of where my head is, understanding that there's, you know, it's kind of almost like trickle down, right? Like there's like a CPS, a district, and then a school set of policies or rules and whatever procedures. Just being able to, you know, it's not necessarily an easy button, but like being able to go to one place and it's all there type thing. I don't know if that's even possible, right? Because there's things may change and whatnot. So that's kind of where my head was when we started talking about, you know, procedures or protocols, or what can people do.
Well, that's definitely what we've talked about.
Yeah.
As both Lindsay, myself, and Lauren, in working on digital assets that centralize questions and make it easier to navigate, as well as increasing transparency on who we are, so that that we can be more easily accessible to people to express questions or concerns. So I feel like that's in the works.
Any other comments?
I mean, I guess just if there are issues with students or staff, they should reach out, like from a
It could be just that,
personnel,
right,
it's-
right.
like, please reach out to myself, Sam, Kristen. Like, we would need to then follow up on that. Students, when Mr. Jackson is here, like, is an appropriate person. Sometimes a teacher is an appropriate person, right? It really depends on the context of it. I am resharing, it's already in like next week's newsletter, the like protocols from the family handbook, just to recenter them, because I think that like the handbook shared beginning of the year, that it's not revisited, and so sometimes there's an opportunity to just like, let's remember that this exists, and these are like some recommendations, along with the process for reporting incidents of harm in the community is being reshared as well. Because I think ultimately the goal is not to like silence or make sure that like for people not to have a way of communicating an issue. I think if there's an issue, we need to know about it and be able to work through it, as difficult or complicated as it may be. I appreciate both of you for like emailing and saying, hey, like this happened, we're not satisfied. That's okay. Like I shared with both of you, like we're always willing to reflect and grow, and we may not always agree, and I'm okay with that as well. But just, I think I don't want people to feel like they can't come forward with a concern, because we need to know what celebrations are and what we need to work on, and then come up with a plan for moving forward.
That's really neat. On that note, I had asked you earlier in the meeting and before you were fully apprised of what I was asking about. We've been talking about protocols for parents to communicate to the school concerns. But the families, and I wasn't at that LSC Equity Committee meeting, so I don't know how many or who, but do you have next steps for following up with those folks who approach the equity?
I would want to know like who needs follow, like what are the things that need follow up on? And do they want somebody with them in that follow-up? Because in our incident reporting form, especially as it relates to harm, we put, sometimes people are not comfortable coming forward to me or to like someone else. But like, please like approach, like, and I think it says it like, please approach like some member of the school community so that they can help make that connection and like maybe be that bridge, and hopefully we can get to a point where there is that relationship where folks know that they can like come directly to me. Like, I really want to act on behalf of students and then in collaboration with teachers and with families. So I would want to know like what is the context that needs follow-up, and then figure out like what's the best approach for follow-up.
Does the committee have a plan?
So that's
Yes,
that's what the
yeah,
letter
this
is.
Okay.
That's so that's.
The pieces.
Yeah, that's so that the content of the request is, do you have that?
Okay.
What happens if, can you share it? And so that's, that's to be also shared with the, with the LSC once we have that conversation.
So I think I might have misunderstood what the draft is. I thought it was a response to the teachers to acknowledge that, but it sounds like, no.
No, I don't see that this is in any of our prerogative. And maybe if it is, needs to be discussed, what the purpose of this is why we heard. When these types of things happen, what's in place to help with this process? It really, truly, it's a way to start the conversation, right? Some parents know, some parents don't know. Some parents, and so we want to just make sure that it's established that, look, this is not happening in a vacuum. There is actually a procedure or sets thereof that folks, that are available. And so what are those, and maximizing not the socialization, but making it available to everyone so that they can see that it's there. The conversations that happen after that are not under our purview per se, right? It's making sure that the parents know that there is a process, because again, like I said, two sets of parents, similar situation, two different outcomes, right? Can happen, but is the process the same for everyone? And that's really what we're trying to ask here.
I think too, as an LSC, like just making sure that we're like staying in line with like our scope of oversight over the school. And while we can be a good liaison for being able to have these meetings and bring them to the attention of the administration, I think just hearing what has gone on today in this meeting, it seems like we are moving into territory that is outside of actually the LSC's role. And so I just feel like, especially as we're talking with parents on the LSC, I think we need to make sure that we aren't stirring the pot with, certain things if we don't have all the information. So like, as far as like the TV watching, like making sure we have the information before petitions are sent out to the school to stop it. And, as far as the equity committee is concerned, I think if parents are having issues, I mean, I definitely, like, I asked Declan and then I asked another kids or another friend of Declan's in the class just to make sure, like, okay, this is actually happening. He is saying the same thing about TV happening in this class, but, then at that point, we can talk as a community a lot, and it just ends up stirring up so much more negativity and like false narratives. And so I think like we have a responsibility to like bring facts to situations. And I know even on the Peirce, the Parents of Peirce website, people have gotten really upset with people when facts are shared. And I think we just need to hold fast to the fact that like we do need to check facts before we make assumptions about something and involve ourselves. That's actually none of our business even to begin with. So I would just encourage our team. I put myself in that too. It's easy to get wrapped into like lots of conversations with parents, but reputations are on the line. jobs are on the line, you know, families who are struggling, are on the line too, so I just think we have to make sure we're, you know, dealing with things that are our role, on the LSC. So, wanted to say that. 35 minutes.
Thank you, everyone. We're now down to our second round of public participation. So we have a sign up sheet. So if folks that might have come in a little bit later, if you would like to come and sign up to participate, you can. I'm not naming anyone on the point. But I think there's one more. So there's one already here. Abby. So if no one else signs up, can I take the whole 10 minutes? You got to clear that. I like to practice what I preach. And in the anti-racist work that we do, we talk a lot about intent versus impact. So I think that I want to take whatever level of responsibility that I have as the former chair, as someone who advocated for the equity committee and really want and try to make it a reality. I wanted to take this opportunity to apologize to Jerry and Evan and Ms. Gableman and all the other teachers for the impact of what happened. It's not the intent of the equity committee. It was not the intent when we formed it. There's real work to be done about it. I think that the equity committee should be and is trying to look at systemic work that they can do. And it's not about the individual teacher or the individual administrator. It's about like the systems that we have in place. So I think that what happened was it was unfair to the individual teachers, to the teachers as a whole. And I wanted to apologize that personally to you that happened and to the other teachers. I think that there are apologies that are deserved. I think that I agree with Evan that something should happen at the next equity committee meeting. I think that the equity committee should apologize to the teachers involved and to the teachers at the school for that. But I think but also I think the equity committee owes an apology to the families who trusted them to bring these issues to them. So I know that Adolfo said that you can go to the principal. There's a lot of people who can't go to the principal, and there's a lot of people who can't go to the LSC members, the elected parent representatives. So that's one of the things that the equity committee was formed for. So to give a venue to people who didn't feel comfortable to come to like the direct power, whatever, the power at the school. So I think that this shows that it's working, and that the equity committee took this opportunity to do something for parents and students who did not feel safe at the school and decentered them, did real harm to these families who were brave enough to come up to people in power and ask that they advocate for them. So I think that the equity committee needs to take all this up at the next meeting, and I think that whatever comes out of that, the LC can endorse that or not at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sears.
Thank you for clarifying, I appreciate it.
Good.
We have
When is the next equity meeting? You said it's next week?
It's in April. I'll get you the
April
date.
13th.
Yeah, Jerry's.
But you said there's a meeting.
No, I'm not. It's the day before my kids' born, like 2 days before. That's why I don't remember.
Did you say there's a special meeting this next week though?
No, we're not gonna, no, there's no special meeting. What we're gonna do is,
Is it about the shooting? Or
Oh, that's the family meeting.
the family?
It's pre-K family.
On the 28th.
is there something else going on in the 28th? Isn't that what they wanted us to sign?
April.
April 28th.
April,
Oh, it's
not March.
babysitting.
We're good.
Oh, April.
Yeah,
I'm so
April.
sorry.
It's like, thank you.
Stop.
It's like, you're good.
I apologize.
I do have one email that, it's from Carlos Rodrigo Diaz, and it says, speaking as a parent of a Peirce student, I find it difficult to believe that members of the LSC didn't know how to address conflict. Didn't know how to address conflict, be they student or teacher. The notion that the spirit is inputs of the interaction was solely to solicit knowledge and wasn't meant as a power move is naive at best. I welcome a reassessment of that stance. And then I asked if he wanted to clarify anything or add anything to that, but I didn't get.
Can you forward the email to us? I'd like to like read it just to have a better understanding.
What is that?
Yeah. So it says, hi, speaking as a parent of a Peirce student. I find it difficult to believe that members of the LSC didn't know how to address conflict, be they student, or teacher. I think they meant say student to student, or student to teacher. The notion that the spirit of the interaction was solely to solicit knowledge and wasn't meant as a power move is naive at best. I welcome a reassessment of that stance.
So was that the soliciting of the feedback that the equity committee?
I just responded and said, can you tell us more?
Yeah.
15%.
On the school, it's on there. Any other comments? Yes?
I'll make a small comment. I'm an actor's daughter, so that it was online, I have to straight. Yeah, so, actually, I was sorry out loud, because I really wasn't thanking her, because I felt like her words really rang true. You know, everybody that was just honest, that's, you know, why we're all here, is for the kids. I just want to say that there's a lot of talk about my name's Peirce, I'm a fourth grade teacher. This is my third year at Peirce. My 37 years teaching, and my last, yes, and and you know, it's all about how do we talk to teachers, how do we talk to teachers. I mean, I was here when we had chalkboards and rotary rooms, and you just came and you talked to the teacher, and that doesn't happen. I mean, even when you just miss kids at the playground, parents stay way back there. They don't even come up, you know, not them. So I think number one, just talk to the teacher. Don't email the teacher, don't post about the teacher. Don't, if you have a problem with the teacher, you know, learn about them in TV or in an email. I mean, it just doesn't work that way. We all know that when we're meetings, you can really see your kids as a person, and you're not seeing them as a teacher either. Like, we are going to say, well, we also about the incident, which really there wasn't an incident, there was just an accusation. Because trust me, had there been an incident, Lori would have taken care of her problems immediately. She is not shy. She's not shy. I don't trust me, we all know this. So if something had happened, that people are going to take care of. And I just want all of you to look at a broader problem, or maybe not trusting teachers, but also not trusting the administration. And that they are doing their job behind the scenes, and that we don't see it behind the scenes that it happens. So I don't want to leave my therapy for the years, you know, that I have such fond memories of the school when it was simpler and less complicated. No email, no social media, and I want to engage with that, but I'm sure she knows what everyone think before you post, right? We tell our kids all the time, think THINK. Is it truthful? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? Is it not? And if it's not, then don't post.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gray. 34 years.
And could go more. Should keep teaching.
So again, thank you all for coming forward. It's not always easy or whatever the case may be, so we really appreciate folks sort of chiming in. Next item, announcements, comments. Okay, thanks.
God, someone brought the cushy chairs.
I know, that's a great idea.
That's where you all out the cushy chairs. You all deserve an award.
Yeah, I mean, if there are none, I mean, this is a great segue to norms. Number one, again, we'll thank everyone. Those conversations were not necessarily all easy to be had, but everybody contributed, and I think that to me was important. I'm not taking attendance, but every single one of us said something about the topic. So I really appreciate that, and the fact that folks are bringing perspectives.
Can I, with the norms, one of the things I was thinking we might consider adding to them. We have this in our PPC meetings, which are conversations with teachers that are part of CTU and school administration. Is not everything has a right now solution, and to trust that the process is ongoing. And I wonder if we want to like explore adding that as a norm, just because some of the work that we do engage in does not have an immediate answer, that we know that it is like something that we need to continue to work. So I don't know what others feel. We can propose that as an idea and possibly vote on that at the, next meeting, but it's something I just wanted to like say.
You want to help us with that, right?
Yeah, I can share.
That'd be great. Good.
Would you like a second?
I haven't even started, jeez. All right, 15, do we have a motion to adjourn? All in favor, what's that? All in favor? All opposed? Thanks, everyone, it's 9:26. Thank you again. Thank you. What's that? Yeah, what's up with that? I mean, yeah, absolutely. We're gonna frame this instead of like this is here. Listen, I was thinking of see you.
I'll show you.
Like, you understand, you know, it's this person. 3 months, and then it's something about regular. So.
Okay. Yeah. So like the design.